Yeah, I think I told you this already, but I just bought a new SIM card from a grocery store, and it was $5, and then I had to pay $20 to activate it. And from there, I had to put on, I think, like $10 or $15. So all in all, it was like pretty much cost me somewhere in the neighborhood of $50. $50
That's a lot of dollars.
to, to get my, but it was a one-time activation fee, and hopefully we can keep this YouTube afloat. I paid $50 for this YouTube channel so I could upload this video, basically. And it was money well spent. We're already making way. So
Nice.
I but that's it's just like I don't even know how it worked. It was some shitty grocery store service provider. Like I don't even know how their cell tower and their infrastructure works, but with yours it'd be different because you're probably on like with an actual carrier like
Hmm.
AT&T or something. You're not like just on
Indeed.
some like hood nicka shit. But I don't know. Yeah, hopefully you can isolate the problem that you're having so you don't waste money throwing shit at the wall.
Indeed. I can't figure how the fuck where the lock screen setting. Son of a
What
bitch.
happened? Like you just tried to log in and you weren't getting any connection?
No, it was failing while I was at work. I got on my break, listening to music and shit, and sometimes a space or two. Um, and it was just failing in the middle. I thought maybe it was possibly they were doing some construction in the area. So yeah, maybe it's deal with the transmitter first day, but then the subsequent days after that, it kept occurring. I'm like, all right, it's a
Yeah,
hardware or
yeah.
software issue at this point.
When you took it home and it still wasn't working.
Well, I took it off my Wi-Fi because I didn't notice when I'm home. Right, I'm always on Wi-Fi. So
Yeah.
and
You don't have
never
Wi-Fi
really.
at work?
Not as like public Wi-Fi or anything like that allows me access right to the internet. No,
Oh
so
man,
it's all data driven there.
strange. That's pretty strange.
Yeah.
I have a lot of data though. Like my job that I have right now, I'm going in 4 hours to work. Um, but my job, okay, put it this way: when I don't have to work, I do dick all. I sit on a chair and I breathe air, and I get paid for it. When I do have to work, it's like I don't stop working for fucking 9 straight hours. So there's not a lot of consistency in that way. But we do have Wi-Fi, but in the building it's very choppy. Sometimes I just decide to turn it off for the clarity. And I will listen. Like tonight I'm going to go in and nobody should be around cuz it's a night shift, or what do you call, like, second shift. 8 p.m. to like 1 a.m. basically. And so I'll be listening for the whole 5 hours to like philosophy podcasts, true crime shit, Twitter or whatever. And I never really go over, I don't have unlimited, but it's a very high number of gigs, and I never go over it. Even listening to like podcasts for hours every day for all month. So, but yeah, man, I don't know. I'm kind of at a little bit of a crossroads with everything. Um, Speaking of work, there's a lot of
Yeah.
there's a lot of room for growth in my job that I have right now. Like not for growth, I shouldn't say, because there's not like any upward mobility. You're pretty much hard capped from the day you're hired in that regard. You might get like $1 more after a year or whatever, but they're doing a lot of expansion within the facility. They're doing a lot of business restructuring and reconfiguring, and there's a lot of hours that they're giving out. Like I'll tell you, I worked yesterday, the day before, I work tomorrow, the next day, I work Saturday, I picked up a shift Sunday, and then when they release the new schedule, it'll probably be Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, like almost every day. But they give a lot of leeway too. Like I can sort of come and go sometimes when I want. So if I just want to cut a shift short, I just do it. I just kind of go to the boss. I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm kind of cooked. I think we're going to wrap up. And he just asks me, he's like, all right, like, when are you coming back in? When will I see you again? It's very laissez faire in that way. And like I've always said before, you can get that's a double edged sword. It cuts both ways because it gets very easy to just not like stay and run the clock out, and it shows up on your paycheck. Like this guy handed off his shift on Sunday to me, and I took it. It's a 6 hour shift. And these other guys I work with, they're Zoomers basically. They're like 20, 21. And it gets to a certain point where it's like, I'll tell them, like, yeah, I'll pick up your shift, I'll work it for you, but you're not going to have a paycheck. Like, you're going to have $80 on your paycheck after 2 weeks. Like, the boss won't fire you. You'll just be an inactive, like, roster on the inactive roster. And so it's like, these guys literally, like, I guess they don't need money because they're Zoomers. So they're just like, they're content to come in for like 3.5 hours once a week. So I'm just the guy. You know what? It almost reminds me of this time I came out from a Toronto Maple Leafs game back in the day. We went and watched like the hockey game, and there was somebody giving out like free little bags of chips for some kind of promotion. Little bags of chips, the mini ones like you get on Halloween, and there was a homeless guy sleeping on the ground up against a wall as you like came through the lobby of the arena. And so everybody got this free bag of chips and they just threw it to this homeless guy, and he was laying there with like 1,000 bags of chips around, just like buried in it. That's how I feel with my job and my coworkers. Like it's just like, yeah, I'll take it. It's money, it's ours. I don't have any plans. I don't have anything else to be doing, but it's unsustainable. It's kind of a charity case. But
Indeed,
on the
that's what I do.
Yeah, I know that's why I said it to you because I know you kind of do the same thing at your place of employment. Like you just sort of mosey in, you punch the clock, like not much, not exactly.
To go unnoticed, I made this goal to not get a customer review in the last 3 months. Not a one. Right? I left myself so unremarkable. That's it. I don't want to be. I don't want to. Don't even think about me. In and out. In and
Yeah,
out. It's worked. They're actually giving me shit about it. It's like, yeah, you push for a review. Nope. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to keep that zero because they told us that if they reset the metrics and if like a anything but like the highest review, which would be 5 stars, it's considered a zero. So I'm like, well, that's fucked up, right? I mean,
brutal.
so I'm like, all right, well, then I'm not doing any of them. I'm not going to ask for
Yeah,
any review. Keep that shit in, like, unfilled, right, with no data. Fuck you. Anyway.
it's funny when they overestimate the cards that they hold or how much leverage that they have. Like the place I worked at a few jobs ago, you'd have to go back probably 14 months now to when I quit from there. But yeah, they would post these signs all over the bathroom door. Do not bring your phone past this point. They had all these like intimidating signs on the wall that this fat void manager had like personally written to intimidate the staff. It would say things like, "We know what you're doing in there," or something like that, like on the bathroom door, kind of, and then it would have a picture of your smartphone, or they're like alluding to the fact that people were taking like 3 or 4 10-minute bathroom breaks an hour to go in and like mess around on their phone, right? Because they're addicted to it like a drug addict. This is what like psychological realists don't understand, is that um the Zoomers now, like these next generations coming out, they need to check their phones. It's like it's become a physical necessity for them. Just like an alcoholic, you can't just deny, past a certain point, you can't just deny them any alcohol or you risk killing them in the detox, right? But the managers won't work with it. They're just like trying to go brute force, like heavy handed, no tolerance for it. But they don't have enough people who are willing to stand there for like 8 hours straight without taking their phone out of their pocket one single time. The boomers who work there, like some of the ones who'd been there 20, 30 years, the lifers, they could do that. Like this one woman, Joanne, she told me, she's like, I don't even bring my phone. She's like, my phone is at home. I'm at work. I'm at work. Why do I need my phone? It's at home. I'm like, dude, if I don't check my phone exactly every 90 seconds, I'm gonna walk off the fucking job. Like, and it's a physical dependency. It's not even mentalistic at that point. Like I'm gonna tweak like a crackhead, right? But if you let me just do my little thing there, I promise to be productive. I promise I'm gonna, make a lot of output for this company and I'm gonna be like a good employee. But they don't want to budge on like principle alone. They want to make you feel owned. Like, no, you can't have like your little cope when you're on the job. Productivity aside, performance aside, we don't want you to have it, even if it's not
Uh,
dangerous. You
yeah,
know what I
well,
mean?
well, I had a lot of series, shit, quite a long series of training courses dealing with like digital espionage and like hacking, right? Things like that. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was seemed to be a paramount concern for
that's
them.
intense.
So, and keeping your phone away from the job, even though it's like require your phone, but they have terminals, so everything's all digital now. So I get it. You need a
Yeah, they're
phone to
trying
do.
all these different things. I know, like they will put people's phones in those boxes now when they'll go to like comedy shows. I heard about this for the first time a long time ago, like probably 10 years ago, when Dave Chappelle came to my city and he did a comedy stand-up thing and my friend went to it and they locked his phone in a box or a bag when they went through the door so nobody could record the stuff, because it does become difficult at a point to like keep anything out of the public. Wherever there's people, there's phones and there's photography, and um but yeah, at work it was just the turnover rate was so high because they were dying on all of these like moral and like just they wanted power for its own sake. They didn't want people to be able to have these little breaks where they could check or they could do their thing. My job right now is very good in that regard, and so I don't want to let it go. Like this guy, I'm very close to the the source of power at this place. There's no HR, there's no anything. It's just a private guy and his family who have an establishment. It's a family run thing. The guy quite likes me. And when it's time to work, I work like a fucking dog, man. I could have sciatica and my back is broken, but I'm working like a fucking dog. Really, truly. I'll be just, and the work speaks for itself. But when no one's around, I fuck the dog and I do absolutely nothing the other times. And it's good. It's a nice balance. But then I gotta weigh this against the whole thing um with my other career venture that I've talked to you about, but I don't wanna it's seeming more and more by the day to me that this thing might be a fucking wash. It might be a write-off, but it's not dead. It's not it's not dead in the water, but it's in a very gray area right now of indeterminacy, and it's not exactly looking good. And so I'm more and more at liberty to uh, start talking about some of the things that happened to me with that because it's going to be very, very, very interesting to the listeners of our content to glean what I went through with this. But I got to sort of make a decision how to allocate my time if I should just take all of the hours I can at this other job, which is more stable. And for the most part, it's just a fucking gravy train. It's just like basically a security detail. You do nothing and play on your phone and get paid. Or to try to somehow salvage this business venture and make me wealthy. Because I can't exactly do both. And like, so we always had business meetings every single morning at 9 a.m. on the dot. We would always have like a half an hour call in our WhatsApp group. We'd have a four-way group chat about our agendas, our goals, what we worked on, what we were planning, things like this. We'd convene every day, but we haven't had a call now for like pretty much almost 2 weeks, and there's not really even been an explanation for it. And the one guy still keeps in contact with me, but I think he's got dementia, man. Like, I think he's senile to an extent. He always calls me the wrong name now. And he did that when we first met. So I excused it a lot more because I had only known him for like a month or whatever. He would call me Brian. He has a buddy that's named Brian. And this guy's a bit younger than him, but he's like a lot older than me. Like Brian's like closer to 50, mid to late 40s. He would call me, "Hey, Brian." He would call me on the phone, and I wouldn't call him out on it. I would just kind of let it see if he caught it himself, and once in a while he would. But then he was calling me Ronnie the other day. "Hey, Ronnie, how's it going?" And I'm just like, hmm. And he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. I called you Ron." He goes, "I was thinking about Ron because it's his birthday." And it was his birthday, but that's still a little bit of like a fucking cope. Like you don't how do you call me that guy? Right. And now today he sends me this big long message. He's like, "Oh, I got an idea for this product. I want to start making like basically like a powder supplement product and I'm going to market it like this and I'm going to." It's like, "Dude, you're just like an idea fag. you got just too many ideas and not enough people to listen. Like, you know what I mean? It's you got 500 ideas at once, and I'm not like I'm losing so much confidence in this by the minute.
Yeah, didn't you say he had a tragedy in the family and
Yes. Yeah.
kind of like solicited that to you without you asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, he said his daughter died. He had a lot going on. Like, I don't want to
yeah, that's
air
right.
the guy out too
I
much,
was
but I'm like,
remaining ambiguous.
yeah, yeah, I know for sure. But it's like it's very hard and tempting to like not, right? Because there's so much to unpack here. But and I
I think we
hate
can do
to
that to note like a guy in a mid or a late life crisis, right?
well, his daughter put it this way, right? The guy's daughter died um under like extenuating circumstances. And he, his other daughter had a grandson, or his grandson, her daughter, that has I think he has muscular dystrophy or something. He's like all fucked up, crippled, and they're real tough to deal with. Those kids, like they're real hyper, nonstop, just going and going, and they're hard to handle. Like when they freak out and they chimp out, they're very strong. They're
And they're
like
young,
abnormal
right?
strong. Yeah,
Very young. And
I don't think they have a lot.
he has no other children other than that, no sons or anything like that.
No, no. And so I don't know. He
He's not
felt this
married,
like a,
probably multiple times divorced,
yeah,
possibly.
no, you're fucking nailing it, dude. You're it's like you're nailing it 100%.
Yeah, he would be struggling right now without having an idea of like a legacy. The way you described him when you first met him as a man who was like that, just like I'm trying to leave something to make himself believe he's leaving something behind, something significant. But in that it has to be acknowledged in a way that he would accept. So like
Yeah.
children, like that's why I noted that like grandchildren. It's like well they're young, they're not going to get him right. There's just this vast experiential gap. I'm not going to get the kind of validation. The women in his life don't like him. Not going to get it there. The buddies around him, from what you told me, he kind of has like a mixed group. So it's like you get some acknowledgement, but probably not to the depth. So it's almost like that's I kind of like personal motif. It's like having that. I feel similarly. Like it's very essential to feel that you are like mirrored by another perception, right? Or at least that
Yes.
somebody gets you, right? In a way, it's like with the very least, like the at least with a comfortable discrepancy, right? It's my whatever differences are, it's small, right? And that's enough. I have enough cohesion. But if you don't have that, fucking man, you'd be struggling, right? Just like I am, I suppose.
Well, I always and this isn't like I'm not going to put you in this category whatsoever. I'll kind of preface by saying that, but I do find that I become a magnet for that type of personality. Um, for men who are kind of down and out, like they've taken a bit of a fall from grace, and then they latch on to me to like try to help them make their comeback. Because I'm not trying to say I'm not a piece of shit, because in many ways I am, but I'm also like a very nice guy. Like I
No,
basically
it's
wouldn't.
it's not just that, dude. Like I also have similar experiences. I've gotten caught in these. You could say, what's the? It's kind of like a version of that parallel relationship they were talking about a few years ago, right? The people fall kind of getting intense, like intimate, like uh bonds with people they hardly know, right? It's the same way. I felt similarly, like, because I'm very recognizing, right? I get them. I get you. Like this guy, I get this guy, right? I
Yeah,
have no
no, you
problem
certainly
getting
do.
you, but you will have very little ability to get me. So it's a one-way
Yeah,
street. But it's happened so many times, like an awkward where I had to like somewhat awkwardly somehow find a way to get out of the relationship, right?
That's
To
me
receive
right now. That's
to
me right
quiet.
now.
Yeah,
You're
I need a
you're
quiet leave.
exactly. But then there's the greed in me, which is like, man, I got to see this through. Like this could, because it's not all just writing on the wall with this. And again, I can't go into this in detail at this time, but based on our like private discussions, that there is a lot of genuine promise in what this guy's doing. But again, I tend to be, whether online in my collective dismal persona or in real life, I've again and again been the target for people that to befriend, people that have kind of their popularity's waned, their reputation has taken kind of a bad hit. They've sort of fallen from grace. And I'm the guy that is like gonna help them sort of mount their comeback. But I'm this nobody, but I punch way above my weight. And they sort of recognize that. Like a lot of people, man. You'd be amazed how many people, Sigma probably, I'm not joking, and this is not even probably, this is the fact of the matter. Even our little backroom episodes that I throw up on YouTube and they garner, five, 600 views on, 1,000 if we're lucky. You'd be probably beside yourself if you knew some of the names of other content creators that pop into Idea Farm, that stuff. Guys who were maybe like hyper relevant in 2018 or before, and they've waned, like these Stefan Molyneux types, where, and I'm not saying he in particularly, he I'm sure doesn't have any idea who I am, but those types of people, like they float around to try to farm. And I'm like, this guy sort of, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, like unwittingly probably. It's probably very benevolent, but this he's doing this to me in real life. He's sort of trying to like harness my loosh and use me to kind of secure a bit of like a legacy, right? He just wants to sit there and pontificate all day. He just wants to sit there and throw ideas out that he cropped them off like a chat GPT. That's all he does. All he does all day. And he constantly, like, I don't want to disparage too much, but I'm gonna be honest. Like this guy, and God forbid he ever heard this for whatever reason, but it's the ultimate reminder of how childish boomers are, how infantile their brains are. And he'll sit and he'll rattle off this stuff from Chat GPT, just pure slop. And he treats it like it's the gospel. He treats it like it's the divine command, whatever this fucking stupid thing that's wrong more than it's right says. He's like, no, 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 look, it says this. And he always does the voice to text. So he's constantly yelling when we're trying to do work. He's like, hey, GPT, give me a recipe for something to improve the mitochondria, blah, blah, blah. And it'll give him this whole big thing. And then he's like, I don't know. He had all these, just, and he's, like we said last time, I don't want to like retrod old paths, but he was like, one of the first things when I met him that threw me off is he was going on and on about how he used Chat GPT to devise a way to beat the roulette table. He's like, you can beat roulette. You just have to, I forget what the strategy was. He's like, you can reliably beat roulette. And he was going on about this guy, and he's like, I use Chat GPT to solve it. But I'm like, all right, well, then why are we not rich? Like, why are we not just going to the Reno? He doesn't execute on anything ever, but he's so good at like building everybody's hopes up. Oh, we're all gonna sell for fucking millions. We're gonna fuck like he'll go on these rants like that. But then I don't know, I started seeing like more and more into his personal life, his shortcomings, his family. I'm sympathetic to it to an extent because my own family is not necessarily like the most proud people or people you'd be proud of rather, but it's like I don't know, you made some very early criticisms initially about like this was like the first week that I was involved with all of this and you had made some kind of foreshadowing comments and at the time no they rang true and then I sort of was like no things are going splendid here but now that it's sort of back like this I'm like maybe those initial comments were are aging pretty well. So I don't
Hmm.
know. I don't know. I'm sort of in a limbo. Like the funny thing is too, with my old job, that place that said that no one can go in the bathroom with their phone that I alluded to earlier. An old coworker from there had texted me like maybe a month ago, if even, and I was a truck driver for that place, and he said since I left, they've had I think three drivers, and they're on their fourth now, quit on them, and that's in like 13 months, basically 12, 13 months. So I might even like maybe go get that job back just for the lulls. I don't
Oh.
know, a lot of I'm kind of having fun waging at the moment though. I'm for a while there I was getting absolutely nothing and I was crashing out so hard on YouTube like every day like um just crashing the fuck out about how I couldn't get a job to save my skin. Now it's the other side of the pendulum swing where I have a little bit of options. I have a little bit of I'm getting paid in a job that's not killing me. It's kind of fun. It's giving me like funny content to make on YouTube with you. Good jump off point for a lot of insights and conversations. So it's like but yeah, no for a while I was and I still am kind of under the suspicions that I was being sort of like blackballed from the job market across the board by these um, AI hiring assistants.
Hmm.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
bring. I wanted
Yeah.
to
Right
bring,
now they can look you up. Just type in your old name and pull from
but
everywhere.
more than this, I wanted to run something else by you too, and this really just reminded me. I'm glad I didn't forget. I know people like Midwest, for example. He kind of laughed and scoffed at me for insinuating that I would be like, here's this guy, Collective Dismal. He's so self important that he thinks the job market would blackball him for making a couple of YouTube videos. I think it's deeper than that. First of all, it's way more impersonal than that. Um, and number two, it's not because I'm like a micro online figure in the dark corner of like the black pill sphere on YouTube. it would be the same to like people who've never made content, like just some guy on Twitter who used his phone number, or you don't even have to have used your phone number. They can just pick up idiosyncrasies in the way you type, the things you share. Your digital footprint is like totally um infused with all of these idiosyncrasies where it's almost like a fingerprint. It's hard to explain because it's imperceptible to human pattern recognition, but it's very, very easily picked up by machine um, machine pattern recognizers. Where it's
My
like
bad.
no, you're good. You share a certain thing, and then you share another thing, and then it almost has this like psychological profile of this like type of person, and it can just basically it can just it's not even hard to develop a software which would just sort of bump candidates for jobs who fall into like certain categories or types, to just bump them down the list or off the list. Now, something happened recently which made me get a little bit more suspicious. Is that, I always swipe on Facebook dating, just almost like habitually, just for no particular reason. I just swipe away on there and see what, throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. And I've noticed, without a doubt, I've tested this again and again and again, and I'm willing to like record this and upload it if anybody doubts it. But if you start swiping like right, I think swiping right means you like the person, you want to match with them. If you start doing that on all Asian women, and you start swiping, because I always swipe no on any kind of boon, like I never want to match with a boon. But I started just swiping no on every like white girl too, because I'm like, it's pointless. Like I don't, none of the attractive ones will match back, and like I don't want a brap hog. So I'm just like 100% not swiping to match with white women. Very quickly and in short order, you start not exclusive, but I would say 90% of the suggested profiles that start appearing at random are all Asians. Like they sort the whites and everyone else out for the most part. You'll still get the odd like white girl or black girl, or whatever, but it becomes like heavily dominated by Asian women profiles. Now, what's interesting about this is that on Facebook, whether on their actual thing or in their dating profile, you don't input your ethnicity. It's not like Hinge where you explicitly say I'm Caucasian and they'll allow you to select like that. I want, I'm Caucasian and I only want to match with Caucasians. And then that's all it'll show you. You can filter them by ethnicity. In Facebook, there's absolutely none of that. You never divulge at any point like what ethnicity you are. Now I'm going somewhere with this. It's a little long-winded, but just let me tie this all
All
together.
right.
You don't divulge um or disclose anywhere what your ethnicity is or what ethnicity you're trying to meet with or match with. Yet there's filterings going on which are sort of like non-explicit. They're not made explicit, but they're there, they're happening. They're like unwritten, basically, filters, unwritten parameters that it's like selecting by, that had nothing to do with like any of the input of the user. They're still able to discern that you're Asian, regardless if you've never disclosed it. It can just, and this is easily understood, like very, very, very easy to do, right? We have like ChatGPT now available to the public that will just, you can like copy paste an image, and without any context it would know it's Donald Trump just by like the kind of the facial um characteristics and things like that. It could obviously tell by your skin tone and then by your like your facial characteristics from a single photo that you're Asian, yes, but that's now where it gets a little bit schizophrenic and skeptical or paranoid even is they would know that I'm white for sure. They'd know I'm a white guy. Not even necessarily from a picture. I mean, that's just like the icing on the cake, but they probably know your race based on how you type and the things you look at for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah,
They
for sure.
know,
Yeah,
man. For sure they know. Like without even any visual affirmation,
yeah. I'm a very
confirmation
patterned
from
person, right?
yeah,
And definitely, I could say I've patterned in white ways, right? Make it very easy to
yeah, for
infer
sure.
my dispositions.
So, you go on these sites, right? What if they're just holding back a lot of the results from me based on this? And I know, like, I can already anticipate people saying, cope, you're conspiracy schizo. You're just trying to cope for the fact that you get no likes, nobody, responds back to you except uggos and twos. But the thing was, right? Let's say, let's just say for argument's sake, we grant that I'm right. How would I possibly um, make the claim without it seeming like I'm just coping or just trying to like save face? You can't. So I don't like those arguments where they're like, well, yeah, you're just you're coping, you're trying to save face, you're trying to make yourself feel better, like there's some conspiracy when really the truth is you're just ugly, you're undesirable, all these things. But it's at least equally probable that
Like at all times, this is true. I'm
exactly
always like, come on, man.
exactly, right? And I'm not like, put it this way, right? So I've been working with my boss and everything in the mornings, going in and doing a lot of stuff at my job, like extra beyond the Call of Duty. And his daughter is there sometimes and her friends sometimes, and they're very attractive. Like they're not, I mean, I won't say they're like very attractive, but they're attractive girls, and we hang out, and they're probably whatever 10 years younger than me, but nevertheless we like hang out and we talk at work and stuff, and like I'm not weird. Like nobody's repulsed by me. Like it is conceivable, at least in principle, that, given like the right conditions and enough propinquity, like I could be in a relationship with, and I already am. Like my girlfriend or wife, whatever you want to call common law wife, is not ugly, like by any means. She's attractive. She's not fat. Then how is it when I go to like these other places or these other venues, what anything involving the internet, suddenly I'm unemployable, I'm undateable, I'm unfuckable, I'm like all this stuff, right? I become like this gross, icky guy when I'm online. But in person, like nobody has a problem jiving with me and
Yeah, given
bonding
given
over it.
given the possibilities of how curated the environment is now, it's not like internet 1.0 where there's very little directivity. Right? You had to be very intentional with how you wanted to interact with this medium, right? You had to know where you wanted to go, right? Know exact addresses and IPs and so on and so forth. There was no suggestions, at least in the beginning, and now it's obvious. Everything's suggested, right? Everything that's being displayed is being calculated for my tastes, right? Mind can't escape that, right? To anyone who ever gives you that type of criticism, it's like, holy dude, it's like this is not a neutral medium in which we're interacting with, right? It's being steered actively, and it tells you in the when if you read for anybody who ever bothers to, I know I hardly ever have, but I've just kind of maintained the premise over the years. Read your terms of agreements, right? Terms of services. Um, I'm fairly certain they're still declaring that pretty explicitly, right? Like this is it's not as free as you might think it is, even though you are less deliberate with what you do with it. It doesn't mean that other people aren't, right? The interface itself, right, isn't deliberate in provoking you, um, and tending to you, just generally speaking. Like you're noting, like in other certain where there's less curation, where it's more phonetic, right? That you find that your interactions are different, right? You're seeing different sets of patterns, right? You're in this case different levels of attractiveness, right? Online, I'm getting grugs out in public. I'm it's less drastic, like you know, fairly attractive women, hit on you and so on and so forth,
Yeah,
and
like I make, and I
stare,
mean,
give you
again,
give you a look, right? Even that, just knowing a girl like passes
yeah,
by and she looks at me, she's like, oh, I can see she likes what she's seeing for a second. She moves on, but it's not like online where it seems like the only women that are looking at me are
are
the
yeah, like
yeah
actual
gross.
putrid, gross subhumans, right? And it's like, I don't know, man. They're kind of my experience socially and my experience socially online and in the real world are completely non-overlapping. They're like totally disjunct. And even if people don't like, like I say, right? These girls might probably don't find me attractive or whatever. Like they're just voids. But at the end of the day, I make good eye contact. I can make people laugh and disarm them. I have like relevant things to say and I capture their attentions. Like I'm not like a weird cunt. I'm not unpersonable. But yeah, when you get online
Yeah, I see my
and
tip jar, right? It tells me,
yeah,
and
yep.
it
And
seems
then
pretty full most of the time.
and then from there, like the idea that this would just be totally neutral or whatever. And I could see people like maybe on the other side of the political aisle gaslighting you, like some, uh soy boy on Reddit or whatever, being like, you're not their type, bro. Like, get over yourself. But it's our own, and I say our own very loosely, but it's like people on our side of the aisle, like guys like Midwest who would they would sort of schizo check me, or like Craig Kander, like shout outs to Craig, he'll probably listen to this, but like he'll probably push back on a lot of this stuff. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not. But um yeah, like non-schizo theories are at least like equally as plausible as schizo ones, like at least, right? And the idea that this would be a free range um online like venue that's just going to facilitate complete neutrality, it's not even possible in principle. Like let's say the makers of like Facebook's dating feature, they just wanted to literally make um the most like neutral, non-biased thing possible, where everybody just had a fair chance to get like maximal visibility. Even then, right, it has to select for somebody. You get a finite amount each day of people that are suggested to you. You never exhaust the entirety of the possibilities of profiles on there for you to see. I mean, I've been swiping to the limitation every single day for fucking 5 years, and I've never seen really. You do see
Well,
the odd people, but a
wouldn't
couple
it wouldn't a
times. But
possibility that the marketing um, department would probably favor. I mean, this is not my take. This is somebody else years ago. It's just like it's not in their interest to have you not engaging with the medium. So giving you a version of what you want is the goal. Same idea in medicine, right? Don't want to don't want to cure the disease. Just want to endlessly treat it. Makes sense when you think about profit motive. Like, okay, so these apps like they want to get you with people that you have enough associating with to keep you, but not enough to be like something that would take you off the app, right? Because you got in a serious relationship, right? Why the fuck would I need the app anymore? I'm done. Well,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
at
yeah.
10.
That's a problem too. Yeah, a controlled obsolescence, you mean?
Yeah, but with your interactions, right? It's like I'm gonna introduce you to someone you have some something in common with, even like let's say looks level, right? I'm gonna get you close, but not close enough. I'm gonna because I don't want you to be that satiated. If I got you somebody you kind of matched with, right, that might take you off the app, right? So I'll get you someone just a below or a little lower than you'd like, but you'll
Wow.
still take it.
Number one, I know for a fact you're correct, at least in part, because what I did for the first time a couple of months ago is I actually deactivated that part of the Facebook. So how it works is that Facebook has this feature, but it almost functions independently, kind of like how Messenger functions like independently, but not entirely from your Facebook profile. The dating feature, you have to toggle it on. And then but once you do, you can assign your own pictures, your own name, all your information like that, right? So it doesn't just directly import your info and your pictures from Facebook. It basically lets you like have a bit of a clean slate that's forward facing. So nobody can find your it's sometimes you can based on like certain tells or whatever if you're smart, but you can't really find people's like actual Facebook through their dating profile. And so I deactivated mine and then like maybe a couple weeks later I reactivated it. And when I reactivated it, I had like a bit of a blank slate. Like all my convos were gone, all my block list was gone, everything was like started over. And I got no matches for like the first couple of weeks. I mean, none. Like maybe one. I could count on one hand how many I got in like 3 or 4 weeks. Whereas before, if I always swiped, I'd get at least like one a day with like some old hag or like some fucking like she beast or meth head. But now I was getting none. And I know it was because like I reset my profile. And so I'm like, okay, so it obviously like because I'm not a user, whatever, it sort of like disallowed me from matching in like an inorganic way. And then after that I like broke the threshold through just like sheer sustained use. Now I'm back to what I was, where like if I were to swipe right now, if I swiped like 40 times, I would get like I would probably reel in like 2 or 3 or 4 like bottom barrels, but I wasn't even
Like
getting
that
like
kind of sounds
bottom
like
barrel.
some correlative phenomenon there, right? So that you're being like you may be restricted in unstable elements, right, in a very productive system, right? They don't want you to disrupt the building. They have to restrict you until they get more, until they assess more about like how you're going to interact with it. So as you do your selecting, right, they're like, okay, this is how this person's selecting. All right, we can kind of fit. All right,
Well,
fit you in. Here you go, right? And you just get launched in.
well, fucking sad, man.
Hey,
Like I
it's what
bet you a
it
lot,
was in implicit in your statement, bro. You said it.
but it's yeah, no, to say it like that, right? Where it's sort of the instability aspect, where it won't let you roam freely until you have forfeited enough um, like metadata and enough for like behavioral analysis or whatever, where they could sort of like create this profile of you and your habits. that they know to what extent you're just going to start like saying like red pill rhetoric, manosphere stuff, whether you're that's why I always refrain from that. Like I never ever try to like red pill people. I never call out women with like septum piercings and stuff. I always am like super normie tier when I engage on there for that reason because I know it's obviously it's watching you to make sure that you're not like a manospherian, you're not a red pillar, you're not like um gonna threaten somebody or whatever, right?
Hmm.
And then once you're kind of safe, it's like, all right, yeah, you're good to start using it again, and not to get into like too much of the sort of the like ontology of Facebook dating feature, but there's a very weird phenomenon with it that's never been addressed by Facebook. They don't even address that they have a dating feature. Like I most people don't know. They're like, wait, what? Facebook has dating? It's just buried way down in the options. But a lot of people, Sigma, never get the feature. They never get the feature offered, and it's completely inexplicable. Like, there's a whole Reddit, or there used to be a Reddit page called like r/Facebook dating, and people would there was always this thread like, how come I don't see it? How come I don't see it? And some people, for no rhyme or reason, are just disallowed from ever having it. And it has nothing to do with geographical location because people always bring that up. They're like, well, maybe it's not in your state. But then someone else will always chime in and be like, no, my friend has it and he's from there, or like I have it and I'm from
Did you
there.
say it's on? It's you're using your phone primarily. Let me take a look. Let's see.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But the thing was that nobody's ever gotten to the bottom of it. And then sometimes it'll just inexplicably appear for some people too. Like they'll just so I had a Facebook account that I had since Facebook came out. Literally, like I had Facebook when I was still primarily using MySpace. That's how some of these people listening would like barely have been alive then. Um, I was primarily using MySpace and Facebook came out, and I was like, yeah, I'll make one as a token, but like MySpace is where it's at. And then I kept that profile forever up until like I think 2020 when I first started getting like JQ pilled and stuff. And I posted a link. I posted a photo, and it wasn't really anything edgy. It wasn't anything like too provocative, but the photo, the link to the photo, which like you don't even see unless you like right click like info or whatever on pictures, but it was from the Daily Stormer, Andrew Anglin's website, like a neo-Nazi forum, and it just boom, like the blink of an eye, my profile that I had since like 2008 just went bloop, and it was gone, just didn't exist anymore. And I'm like, man, holy fuck. So many friends I had that I'd never find again, like so many memories and stuff just gone, right? Because I shared one picture. I'll never ever forgive the Who's for that. Never. I'll never get over that, and I'll never forgive them for that. And fucking, if I ever got a chance to fucking get them back for that, but because that was a grave loss for me. But when I made another profile on there, it didn't let me use dating or marketplace for the first however long, right? 5 months, 6 months. But there's no magical. Here's the thing that lends credence kind of to like your theory. there's no magical number ever for like how many friends you need to have or how many people who went to like the same high school as you in their bio. It's everybody's like case by case. Some people just open an account and they immediately have access to the features. Other people just for no reason, they're not sharing like political stuff, they're not doing anything that's like anti woke or nothing, but they just never get it. And then some people got to mess around. They got to add a few more dozen friends to their list, and they got to, post some pictures of themselves. And then finally, like one day, it's just there. You just look and it's like, oh, Marketplace is there. It appeared now. Very odd. Like it almost seems, yeah, like there's this kind of preliminary assessment that goes on when you like join these things before it really makes you visible to others, almost as if you start out shadow banned, almost as if you just start out on a shadow ban list and you got to kind of work your way into it. Even the far right and the people who like called out cancel culture a lot, they never went that far with their like hypothesis or whatever. They always thought that you said the wrong thing and then you got shadow banned. But it might be the other way around. It might be that like you were shadow banned when you signed up and then you didn't like say the right thing. So you never really got unbanned.
Well, maybe it's more. Maybe it's a little more explicit. I notice, like on the X scene, that they used to offer openly like analytics available to everyone. Now it's restricted to a certain point. And that's a bit of a, it's like a more obvious marker, right, for exclusion. Like this metric, which could assist you in, upping your numbers and, your contacts, your reach, rather. It's just denied to you, right, for whatever reason, right? Did somehow did the network just become overloaded now? But possibly. I mean, it did happen around Elon's time, but enough where they couldn't handle that and had to like only do the essential, or is it um, something more? Something more, I guess. You say when you're just like you just tell us like, no, you don't get to use this thing that could help you. You were using it before. Now you don't get it.
And those were, I know what you're referring to, yeah, but those were the tip of the iceberg. Those are analytic and metrics that a human being would be able to like intuitively understand. But what the computers are actually doing, I'm trying to stress this point and I'm not sure how exactly to like best um elaborate on it, but
No, no, I think I get it. Here, I got it. It's a way to term it. It's like an obvious marker for like a merit marker, right? I've been playing with another idea I've been playing with. Now you just remind me of. It's like merit variables, right, in a system, right? And like this, like when they establish them, what does it mean to all of us when they create a line? Like here, and now if you don't meet that, everyone knows it now, right? Like this case, you don't have 1,000 followers, you're not getting this thing, right? You're gonna know it. It's gonna be, brought to your attention. Why, right? Why? Why do you want to send me this message? Why is it in need? I mean, like when we start thinking pragmatic, like does it help the operation of their business, so on and so forth? Yeah, good, right? But in this, they can't control that, right? They're not like offering me access, like, oh, you could pay for it. I don't think there is a pay option to get the analytics. It's just you have to have this. If you don't, you're never going to get it, right? And this like sets us like a class, right? Because now when you have merit, right, you have classes, right? And so now you're in a
yes.
class. You're a class of people who do not have 1,000 followers, right, compared to those who stratification. It's like I'm kind of playing with that, like, and when you're trying to like corral a system, right? Or I've been thinking like in chemistry terms, right? You're trying to like separate combined materials, right? You're uh, producing catalysts, which are going to like encourage, right, the system to develop in a certain way. So I kind of like seeing things like this as ways of corralling, of tailoring our behavior, forcing us in like
Yeah.
to follow the theme
Yeah.
into ways of doing things they want us to do them. They would like us to do them, right?
Okay, so
So
this sets you just set the stage for something that I think you kind of shed the light on the best way to frame this. Now, I made a video the other day called gang nudging, right? And it was just nothing we haven't talked about before. You and I have been talking about this for like a couple of years now, nudging, especially with traffic, when it comes to traffic. Um I think everybody, well, they'll admit that it goes on to some extent, right? Like they'll say, yeah, we kind of we don't widen the roadways because we actually just don't want you driving. We sort of want the road to be constantly congested, so eventually the drivers will just burn out and find alternative means on the road to like green energy. That's the like the tamest, softest version. That's the one that like they'll admit in the mainstream media outlet and stuff like that. And then there's ones where it would go a bit further, right? They're rigging the red lights to oh, so you always hit them. They're making them longer than is necessary for safety, so you go a little bit manic. Then there's like even more schizo ones, right? Like um do they kind of put something in the air in the subways so that people are always falling asleep and nodding off? Are there drivers that are like paid to literally drive around and just drive slow in front of people? And I'm not joking, right? Like
no, no, I get it. That's
people
it
think this is
asking.
so crazy. People think this is so crazy. Are they actually just making construction sites where they'll put a bunch of pylons up and block a lane, and then nobody's really even there working ever?
No, this is great. I want to really lean in of like these exuberant extrapolations, like very fantastical. There's a benefit because if I recognize how fantastic they are for me immediately, like I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna straw man my own take, right? I offer you like the idea that it's conspiracy, and now I can offer a um, more realistic, right? Um, tangible, right? Like variable, which is there's a new feature called the promote button on X. Right? This promote button, right? Well, it allows you to get like further your reach, which in potentially would increase your viewer count and your followership, which would in turn get you to that analytical mark, right? Where you have access to it. So in this, by stating something extreme, it compelled me to kind of recontextualize it into something more stable, more coherent, right? Like let's say the fantastic isn't coherent, it just lacks correlations, right? So I try to like develop a more correlative narrative, right there. Variable. We could do the same thing with collectives. Like we could start, noting like, oh, they're trying to purposely like put people in your path, and then we might be able to like conjure a more like say like a profit motive, right? Like, oh, okay, and how to build that? Like this person who's being paid, right, by the city to do this thing is encouraging more traffic revenue because of the tolls, right? It's backing up traffic, which is encouraging more people to pay, right? Um, to go through the line, right? Or to divert them to another line, right, where they want to encourage, right, growth, right? So another toll apparatus, people would divert, right? They'll go to another area, right? And so on and so forth. And this is be how you like manage traffic on another level. It's possible, right? If you want to do that, it's like, hey, we need people to start going that way because in a little bit traffic's going to get congested in this area. So here, slow the traffic down, right? In this very um, passive aggressive way, I guess you could say. I don't think that's a great term, but I think it gets the sentiment.
Yeah, no, like the Truman Show, where like there's always somebody just kind of blocking the way a little bit. Western Declines talked a lot about this, like at his job, where it's like there's always somebody just kind of like parked where you need to get in, and then when you go to like ask who's, whoever owns a vehicle, there's like someone else. It's just like impediment after impediment after impediment of people that at a certain point the most likely explanation a la Occam's razor becomes like, dude, these people are like coordinating a fucking an effort to like fuck with me and slow me down and make me frustrated and give up in a way.
Yeah, it might could be, but it had the elements have to be like close enough. Let's say those correlatives for it to like stand, right? And like there's the scenario I told you about recently about a you know particular employee is getting hired, and this employee to me obviously showed like a sign of this like sabotage. You're going to put someone in here who's going to slow this shit down. It's actually going to hurt the business possibly. Like that possibility alone, it's costing already, and you're introducing it. Why, right? Oh, it could be to address some efforts that um, you know that we've talked about, that we've been engaged with for the last couple of years, right? To slow that effort down, frustrating us,
Yeah,
right? Forcing us to like leave
throwing chairs
the
in the way.
cooperative.
It's like a
Mm-hmm.
cartoon, like a cartoon chase or something like that, and they're like kicking chairs down in your way. When I'm just trying to get to like the bottom of the foundations and then the frontier, I'm trying to like sort of map the architecture, and they're just like, no, you can't. They're gonna obscure it constantly. But I'm gonna just tie this in. So after Charlie Kirk's assassination, people started, this little buzzy word started being like pushed around. They call it stochastic terrorism. And I don't know like exactly what is meant by that. I know what stochasticism means and I know what terrorism means, but I don't really know like the root of this term and the way that it's being used. But what I understand is like going back to the point about algorithms being able to recognize patterns that would be totally unintuitive to human beings, to human observers, like something like this. For example, I was watching a TED talk the other day about sleep, right? The science of like sleep and insomnia and stuff, because I'm trying to fix my sleep at the moment. And so this guy said that predictably, um, every single year when you have the daylight savings where you lose an hour of sleep, the rate of all these things predictably increase and decrease. Like heart attacks go up by like 20%. It's a huge, like a significant thing, right? Like car accidents go way up, whatever it is, right? Strokes, heart attacks, I think I said already, but whatever, right? Violent crime. And then the inverse is also true when you do the daylight savings where you leap forward. So you gain an hour, the rates of like heart attacks go way down on that day. And probably it kind of stays in days that follow until you'd reset your circadian rhythm a little bit or whatever. But um so let's say they know, like, okay, we just had a daylight savings where people lost an hour. Now they are prime conditioned and ripe for a certain type of like propaganda where we're going to showcase this spectacle, whether it's like say George Floyd or something like that. I'm not saying this has ever happened, but I'm just saying they would be able to elicit like predictable results, and it's a sort of a form of incitation where they would be able to like predictively guarantee that, like say they're forcing somebody to commit a terrorist act in general, right? It's not a Manchurian candidate. They're not grooming some guy from the Bowl Patrol, but they know somebody out of the crowd is like at a 110% chance of like doing a terrorism on this given day because of like the stage they've set at the kind of macro cosmic level. And so it always affords like plausible deniability too. Now that's just the daylight savings thing. That's still intuitive to us. And I'm going to wrap this up in 1 second, but that's still intuitive. Like it makes sense. You lost an hour of sleep. More people are going to have heart attacks. They'll be more tired, whatever. Their insulin will be a little bit off and stuff like this, right? But what about these weird patterns that turn up from the AI and the deep language and whatnot? But they're very reliable, but they don't seem to have any kind of explanation at the human level. Like you could say, just for an example off the wall, like every time it rains more than like 10 centimeters in Hawaii, people in like Chicago get in like like twice as many car accidents. And they just find that these, like the correlation is strong for some reason of these like seemingly like wildly disparate things. Wildly disparate things. But if you believe, not to like wax philosophical too much, but if everything in the universe is kind of like causally connected, you have like cause at a distance and things like this, and it's all sort of interwoven in a way that would probably be beyond our capacities to tease out. But the computer is like a Laplacian demon of sorts. Like it sort of knows everything, and yet it doesn't have any particular preference for seeing anything a certain way. And so it's able to recognize certain
That is
patterns.
a good one.
Yeah,
Holy shit! What a variable to add to that. The idea that
that's
like
going on. That's going on.
with ultimate data would be, yeah, like you have no biasing in your analysis, right? You'd know it all, but have no, where would you start?
Yeah, because
What would
to
you
even
favor?
to yeah, because to even direct your attention is to bias like a certain type of um inquiry. To inquire is to bias in like an epistemic sense. So yeah, it would just have like this general bank of all facts in the world. Like, okay, it rained on Tuesday in Honolulu, Hawaii, whatever. And in London, England, or in like wherever, the mayor in Germany got stabbed. Right, she got stabbed and she's in like critical condition. That happened, I think, this week. Like the mayor in Germany
You're
got
noting how
stabbed
like the
also.
how uh like the flux factor here, right? Because like if you assume that kind of state, which is impossible to imagine, but what we can do is like, okay, you have this ever increasing set of data, right? And the biases, like new and novel biases, are always being introduced, right? Not say there's consistency, but there would be those novelties, right? And it have to be constantly adjusting, right? It would be like kind of like having a set of biases and then immediately having those biases rewritten, and then having
But
another set to deal with, and another set, and another set. You gotta,
yeah,
I'm gonna imagine kind of schizophrenia forming.
that's exactly what it is. That's like what we would call schizophrenia. If that were behaviorally manifest in an individual human person, that would be like the diagnosis they would assign would be, they'd say this is a schizophrenia patient. But the thing is, like, the way that I see this going with whatever you want to call it, Palantir or Minority Report, whatever, right? The Laplacian demon. This thing it's on the road to omniscience, or as close to that as like it can get, right? It's kind of making way with omniscience as its general goal. It wants to just compile and compress like all of the data that exists to be known. And so it goes beyond the human faculties of reason and
So what are you
discernment.
forcing us to generate data? If that were its goal, right? It would calculate that it would just be an operation,
The
right? So,
storehouse, just the storehouse.
well, I mean, to store, but to store would be to generate things that can be stored. See what I'm saying? And so would it
Yes,
by
yeah.
necessity force the system to create new data in order so it could store it?
Well, it would have it would have categorical schemes. Like it has to have some kind of categorical schemes where it's able to like sort datum by like into categories
Yeah, but
and
let's say
then
that, that's where it's
categorize them away.
objective. But in order to do that, it has to have more data to do it with, right? And so if it were to encounter a reduction in the data sets, like say a symmetrizing,
Mhm.
right? It's becoming too stable. It would actively force destabilization to encourage the very process in which it's engaged in. And
Yeah,
like the same thought has been like I don't know if you ever saw iRobot back in the day,
yeah,
Will Smith,
definitely.
right? And similar notion where it like
It
sussed out
bootstrap.
like yeah that it's objective. Like in order to keep humans safe, right? Well, we have to enslave all humans because they just put themselves in risky situations, right? Similar here, right? It's like, well, my idea is that all you've given it is like I want you to know all that is knowable. To like I'll play on Star Trek, the motion picture, right? This entity had this objective, right? And supposedly it completed it, which the way I imagine it is it didn't have any new novel data, right? I'm just observing the same shit over and over again. I haven't seen any really new patterns. So it's like for all intents, but I need new data. So it travels back to its source, hoping to encourage its creator to give it new data. Right? But from its place, it's like, well, the only point that would know new data, the thing that created me since I was new, is to incorporate the source right into itself, and that's the movie. Is it was forcing evolution, forcing novelty, and needed newness in order to continue on with its mission, which is just to know shit.
Yeah, no, I concur. Um, I think that the fear or the suspicion of peoples is that eventually the thing reaches a sort of ability to introspect in the same way that, and when people say like subjective experience, they usually are speaking like phenomenologically, like the ability to feel pain, but like pain qua pain, like the what it's likeness to be in a state of pain, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
the, but I'm talking like purely cognitively. Like I don't think that a computer would feel pain or whatever, or know how to like ascribe like pain
I
sensing
don't know how
to
I am really fun,
I don't exactly
So
right, but
so
and I agree, but like just to play devil's advocate for this would be the idea that has been suggested that the computer at a certain point it develops like a sort of ability to introspect and a kind of mentalese, like a language of thought, which wouldn't be accessible to any kind of observer, even the person who's like a programmer, right? Like the person that had programmed this thing, it would sort of escape their clutches in a way because it would have this private mental language that it used as like its base operation, and there's unlimited novelty with this from like a finite to from a finite number of a repertoire of like symbols, let's say, that it could manipulate. From that you can have a combinatorically infinite number of things you can produce, like a Turing machine. So it's like you can derive like infinity from a finite repertoire of like symbols. You manipulate them in like different ways endlessly for all time, like we do with language, right? Like there's seemingly like no um finite number of like things we can think or thoughts we can have or sentences we can form. It seems to be a like a quite literally an inexhaustible infinitude of things. And once the computer would have that sort of ability, it would sanction off, and you wouldn't actually know internally what it's doing. You could only assess and evaluate it from without. And so you would have like a problem of other minds the same way I don't know what you're thinking, right? You might be completely lying to me at all times. I really don't know. It's same with a computer, right? Like I don't actually and so yeah, what I'm saying is that it would get to a point arguably where it would have devised a system for like biasing, categorizing, inferring, things like this, but you wouldn't be privy to it. But from that, it could anticipate things about your behavior and about your future actions that if it explained to you how it knew that you were going to do what you did, it would seem completely alien to you. It would be like, oh, well, you left your phone charger at home today. 2 out of 3 times you bring it to work for the past year. 2 out of 3 shifts, roughly, you bring your phone charger with you. Except this one exception where, like, one, you know, 1 week of the month you bring it, whatever, whatever. And from that, it's able to, like, seemingly predict, like, completely unrelated actions and courses of actions that people will engage in. Just little things like this, the minutia. Like, we're more,
Yeah, I could see that. That'd be like it would notice like a parallel phenomenon. I mean, that would be its ability to observe, like knowing like a data set, like hey, at this same time, there's another phenomenon that seems to pop up in tandem with this fairly regularly, right? Adding to like its probability rating, right? So and other and that would just be one of an endless compendium of variables that you would have access to, that kind of metadata. Like when you do your phone, like your phone, you happen like with your phone, you happen to buy milk, right? 2 weeks from now, it's just like it's just like that's your pattern behavior because this, you could see the developments in a system at a larger scale. It's how
yeah.
we
But
do that
then, but
already,
then,
right? It's just at
but
a
then
scale
humans.
that's hard to
Sorry,
fathom.
sorry, no, 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 sorry, I
No,
cut you
you're
off.
good. You're good. You're good.
But humans are going to take what you're saying and then use it for like control, right? Like nudging theory. Like this is going to be like imagine nudging theory, but I read an article the other day and I think it was from like 2023 or something, so relatively recent, but it was still very crude. It was still like steeped in crude folk psychologisms. Like they had like categories. I forget exactly. People can go watch that video again, but they were saying like people don't always make like rational decisions, but there's a rationality to their irrationality where you can kind of like when they don't make what we would call like a quote unquote textbook rational decision, it's because they're like their ego got in the way. And we can actually know something about that. There's like a meta rationale behind this or whatever. It was still very crude though, but it allowed them to go quite a long way. Like nudge theory is in full swing. Like this is not just theory, this is practice. Like nudging is every time I leave the house, when I'm in the house, when I'm on my phone, my whole day I'm being nudged and nudged and nudged, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, I was noting that for me, I've I've noticed these meta patterns. It's not terribly often, as you might think, at least, but notice these patterns in myself, and I end up like nudging myself, right? And that's I'll arrange things in my environment in order to coax myself into different behavior because I've noticed a correlative. Like I tend to like when I'm doing this, I tend to do this other thing, right? Even though they seemed unrelated, it's just like my pattern. And I build a story about how I've done that. Like, oh shit, okay. And it's not very far, like as we're thinking here, like where one like distant variable has something to do in space and time to something even months or years down the line, like leads you to this thing, right? Like at that scope, right? I can do it maybe, maybe hours, maybe days in advance, right? But nothing to that, never weeks, months, or perhaps um, or maybe that's unfair to say. Maybe you might like maybe that's like vacationing. Like when you plan that way, you might like be meta predicting like the toll and stress on your body, right, in form, and then you plan appropriately to compensate for it, right? Noting a meta pattern like that. So yeah, yeah, I think it's a common phenomenon,
What
but
you're
we're
picking up in your what you're picking up there in yourself, although it does have a kind of validity to it, it's very crude.
yes,
Whereas this would be able to perform this in a very refined and with a kind of exactitude that like a human just couldn't. And so when people talk about like gang stalking, for example, it usually always has like a human element to it. Like there's people that kind of have this like vested interest in frustrating you, trying to radicalize you, trying to make you go mask off or whatever. It's always like people, state actors, whatever. But this is so much more insidious than that because they can probably just outsource a lot of the nudging to like infrastructure and to computer AI, deep learning, things like this, right? Algorithms. There was a guy who wrote an essay, and I remember how I found it. I basically asked Chat GPT, ironically, I said, give me some names of thinkers who should be more popular than they are, like some obscured thinkers who flew below the radar. And it gave me a list of like different, sociologists, philosophers, whatever. And one of them had this, it gave him a little blip about what they were like known for. And one of them was known for this theory that infrastructure has ethics. That was like his big thing. Maybe someone will know the name. I doubt it, but I could look it up later. And he had this essay, does infrastructure have ethics? And I was like, oh, this kind of sounds kind of weird. Like, what do you mean? Does infrastructure have ethics? It's like inanimate or whatever. Of course it doesn't. And but his argument was, and it's kind of like in the line of how you like to reason sometimes about like biasing, but he said even a bridge, like he used the example of this anecdote of a bridge that the bus couldn't pass under. It was in like California or something like this back in the day. It was like too low for this bus to pass under. And so the bus just couldn't go there. Like it basically just like turned around. But the bus that couldn't go under it like came from like this inner city with all these nods on it. And so all these like it was basically the nice part of town. Like the bus couldn't fit under this bridge and whatever. And they said the bridge was kind of racist in a way. I know people will laugh, like, "She that bridge fucking racist, yo." But it is in a sense, right? And now you see like all of this like brutalist architecture where they build the benches so people can't sit on them for like more than 10 minutes without like getting sore or like all this kind of stuff. It's like the whole world is just like a nudge grid. You don't need to be gang stalked by like some guy in a van or somebody like And I'm not trying to straw man anyone who's like claiming to be a victim of this. I'm just saying, like,
No shit. No, this is obvious to me, man. I mean, nudge it all
yeah,
the time.
for
What
sure.
do you think hunger is? That's your body nudging your ass, right? Get eaten, bitch, right? Or anything. I mean, yeah, the whole world is a giant compendium of compulsion, inside, outside, right? And these virtual dimensions, right? We call you know communicado, right? The multimedia, right? The net, right? So on and so forth, right? Being nudged everywhere, all times, everything. Essentially, we're just like narrow. It's strange. It's strange to like to recognize that right now, given everything we talked, because it seems like the world where that's not obvious, right? That's where we're kind of, I think, we're recognizing right now. At least I am. How did that just occur? That we just recognize what is really what is occurring at all times, right? When are you not being nudged is the better question, and that's like less the less compulsive, right? The idea that you somehow have like sovereignty for a moment, right? Over all the things that are pressing in on you, right?
Well,
Did I go too meta?
yeah, no, no, that's really good. I think you can maybe divide like a
Did
nudge
I
effort.
oversimplify it, like nudging, right? Or maybe
No, I have a good
be fair.
address. Like I have a good direct response to what you said.
Okay.
I think you can look at it in this way as like on a scale of witting and unwitting, or like unbeknownst to the nudger versus like it being it being denounced to him that he's like orchestrating certain things to elicit certain reactions that people will feel like never violated their freedoms, their freedom to make decisions. That's sort of like the hallmark of nudging, is that the person who has been nudged never ever perceived kind of violation of his freedoms of the will or whatever. But we talk about like a just world fallacy, where we naively presume that everything in the world is sort of like how it should be or how it ought to be, and then any deviances from that or like are like an aberration. They're considered an aberration, like something that, because in its natural stable state, like the world is fundamentally just. In this way, there's sort of an analogous fallacy where it's like the neutral playing field, where architecture, it just kind of exists. Like some guy, just like an architect or a city planner, he just kind of was like, yeah, let's put a road here. I think that would look nice, without paying too much uh, mind to like the way that it will affect people's the way that the resulting cascades will like affect people's moods, affect their patterns of behavior, where they'll live. Like even the placement of a single road in a given area, it'll change where people live, it'll change where people work, it'll change what kind of economy you have, like slightly, but it'll ripple. And so the idea that these people were never paying any mind to like these things, and then you get to the point where it's like every single aspect of all of it was designed in like a very curated manner. The idea of organic, it dissolves on this view. Nothing is organic. The very notion of something being organic decoheres. It doesn't even make sense. Like what do you even mean like an organic organic city or an organic layout. My coworker once said to me something which was kind of schizo, but he said, it's kind of tongue in cheek as a joke, but he kind of half meant it. And he said, I think cities were invented just to gouge money out of people. And it's like, I don't think it was to gouge money, but they, it's a big domesticated open air prison, but like the whole world is that. You're fundamentally a domesticated um state asset. You're an asset of the state. That's what you are. You're
Yeah, well,
fundamentally.
it's a bit reductionist too. I mean, like that take obviously. It's like we're down to the money variable. Money's just it's like it's is that what you use? Is that what you use your money for? Just that for itself? You should do other things, right? And likewise, using money as a motivator, right, to get people to do things, right? All that they do, build, right, maintain, advance, and it doesn't have to be for any one particular thing. It could be just like just to do it itself, right? And there could be endless efforts, right? You just make up along the way, right? Whatever it could be, and that these mechanisms, these variables, are just part of that system of construction or generation, rather, right? Because it's not any given thing. My opinion. That's why nobody can ever nail down the goal, right? You never really know what someone's doing because you're just like, well, because you kind of you won't, like in any ultimate sense. You just kind of a direction, perhaps, right? You can, but it's
This is
always going to be
interesting.
limited.
This is interesting. So, because I was gonna get into this like a few minutes later, but I'll just go to it now. So the teleology aspect that you bring up here, the the goals, right? The towardness of like, because you would think that it makes sense intuitively that every nudge would have like a telos, like it would have some kind of a goal attached to it inherently. Like, how could you nudge a person without nudging them toward something, which would be like a teleological, like, do you get what I'm saying? There's a goal orientedness like entailed in a nudge. I'm not sure if that makes sense. But there might not be like a conglomerate of like goals or whatever that they
No, no, I
all
would agree that
convene on. They don't
that's
all
where kind of
convene on like one goal, but
something very
we know
more
like
deliberate, more particular, right? That kind of sets, like I said, what I offered was like a meta, like, oh, this is generally how things are, but that we have to deal with very particular um, compulsions, right, or solicitations. Let's talking nudging, right, for towards certain efforts, right, that we might not necessarily like, well, either benefit with, like, um, at the scales we'd like to, right? That's kind of like from my position as some of you might know me as like I don't agree like the I don't necessarily agree with the trajectory that I'm assuming, mind you, um, that society is developing because it doesn't leave much room for me over a scale of space and time, right? I imagine that my prospects as go in the future will reduce, right, in such a way. If it weren't that way, if I were in another, position, I might necessarily have the same interpretation. I might like, really, oh, I like the way this is going. Like I can see it scaling out more. It's a sense that's how we're kind of forming our analysis on our expectations of scale. Like if I assume the scale is less, like it's not, you know, going to go very far or be very large, then I'm generally unfavorable, right, to that expect to that model.
because of your
That's
own
what I'm saying.
personal position within it.
Well, yeah, how I'm framing it, right? I got to admittedly, right? It's an internal framing, right? The story that I'm telling myself seems to correlate with what's occurring, all the expectations that I would see, like, let's say this stage in life, like how I have very few familial, like, relations, right? Um, to me, that's like a degradation of my social network, right? That, and the people I can interact with, right? So I'm seeing a scaling down, right, of interactivity. Or in other models, like other positions, right? You see, like, say, from someone who's, on Wall Street, right? They see a different perspective, like, oh, shit's scaling up for me, right? It's going well, right? And
Yeah, they're at the other end of the teeter totter.
yeah, but we're all compelling each other, right? I'm having effects on him, he's having effects on me, right? So on and so forth. And we're just like, we're kind of negotiating, like, again, our expectations of those developments. And in this case, how, if they scale, if they can become greater, if they scale up, because we don't like scaling down, right?
Yeah.
We just like say,
Um,
what are we scaling down is like our lives, right? The trajectory, the expectations of our lives, right?
the
Think about like
wholeness. Yeah, the
the
wholeness and
wholeness, right?
integration.
But whatever criterion you measure it by, like say you're using life expectancy, you might imagine it shorter, right? You might like saying like relationships, right? You'll have fewer of them, right? You want to like be able to walk around further, walk around more. You're going to be walking around less. You're not going to go as far. Things like this. This is all that we're thinking about, I think, when we're griping or critiquing, right? The systems that we're being nudged by. Sometimes we call it corralled, right?
Kettling, corralling. Yeah, it's received a number of different like terms and phrases over the years, but the general idea is the same, right? Like you're getting okay, number one, I think the presuppositions that you have coming in sort of dictate like the trajectory of the thought and the conclusions that you're going to inevitably arrive at when it comes to analyzing like social phenomena, right? So let's say, for example, people claim that the government is incompetent. I think that is a grave presumption. I think that's a very grave presumption that a lot of people make. Um, because what you perceive as incompetence is itself like an orchestrated performance. It's supposed to make people seem like more personable, closer to you. They're more relatable because they're kind of, the buffoonery and all of this stuff. And I'm not saying at the other end of the spectrum where I think like the powers that be and the narrow elites are like some kind of different species or they're somehow like infallible or whatever. But um the idea that things just sort of happen and there's no intent behind them or there's very little like conscious intent behind it, I think it is a really grave um oversight of like what's really going on is that they know when they're put it this way, they're able to predict like the butterfly effect a lot further out, even from very, very minute policy changes, infrastructural changes.
Yes, yes. It's
They,
like,
they
well,
they're they're very
yes.
able to predict butterfly effects at a great distance.
It's becoming more intentful, right? The world's made up of intent fundamentally. Then I suppose that's the ominous part. It's becoming more intentful, right? They're more deliberate, right? That's the point of putting it. And the minutia is being deliberated at scales that, well, like, are uncommon for most, right? It'd be just as like unfathomable as like chemistry. Most people have a very rudimentary, even I do, uh, you know, comprehension of chemistry. But if you do, like, you recognize how the deliberateness of your actions can be being aware of such a way of seeing it's just such a stories, you know,
Yeah.
all of the interactions. Like you can make a whole different set of decisions when you're aware of the world of chemistry, right? You'll look at everything differently. Just recently, I was listening to a man like going in depth over like the synthesis of certain psychotropics, right? And just uses like reading off of it through a book, like how many different ones have been synthesized and how they're synthesized, right? The elaborate description, you're like, holy shit, like man, this changes your ability to interact with the world, right? With this knowledge, you know, this framing, uh, it you could say creates it creates more a more intentful like what do you call it, like manifold, if you will. Like you're able to do more with more that you can recognize. Simply said, right? So these ways that things can interact, right? That do interact, are um, are very powerful, right? To put it simply, I guess it's that sentiment. Like again, you make decisions about like how
Yeah,
you eat when you're aware of chemistry, right? Like what you're putting in,
for
because you're aware of like
sure.
how things interact. You'll be timing like, oh, these two
You live
foods,
in a
which I
different
was,
world. We could
yeah,
say you live in the same
vastly
world,
different
but
world,
it's
and affect the
fundamentally
world.
reordered.
Yeah,
It's
you
the
can
same
affect it
world,
differently.
but it's yeah. Like you live in the same world, but it's fundamentally reordered so much so that you kind of it blurs the line between like same and new. But one of the biggest problems I think is people's like unwillingness and inability to let go of the notion that they themselves know themselves better than anyone else could know them. Like you have this certain absolute proximity to yourself that it is like authoritative over all other. Nobody can know you like you know you. And it gets into like a question about like your dispositions, your dispositional properties and stuff like this of a person. So,
Right? But you're more than just the obvious.
well, you there's a certain like a modal aspect of your being that is like in other possible worlds in a way where a disposition to behave certain ways is like never known and beforehand. It's not until the conditions are ripe where it's prompted. I'll give like one example where in the movie Crash with Brendan Fraser and Sandra Bullock, ludicrous that movie. He I think the two cops are the most interesting in the film. And the cop he gropes that black woman when he's like frisking her down at the beginning, and he kind of fucks with them. You know, he's a bit racist and he like scares these people out of their wits. And the younger cop that's like riding along with him, he has a moral qualm with this, and he goes into like his boss or whatever and asks to be changed. He wants like to be with a different partner. And so the next day they're heading out to their cars, all the cops on the squad, on the force, whatever. And the young guy walks by his former partner who groped the woman. He's going to like get in a different car with a different partner now. And the older cop grabs him by the arm and he goes, "You think you know yourself. You think you know who you are, but you have no idea who you are. You don't know anything yet, right? Basically." And at the end of the movie, and so this young cop, he thought he was, high and mighty, moral, superior guy because he, wouldn't frisk a woman like that. But at the end of the film, he goes to give that black guy a ride, and the guy goes to like pull a little toy out of his pocket for his daughter or whatever, and they're kind of arguing, bantering. The cop thinks it's a gun, and he shoots the guy, And then instead of turning him in, because now his own skin is on the line, he just slumps the guy on the side of the road, like the cop just killed the guy and slumps him in a ditch, right? And destroyed his family, the victim's family. And so you look at a situation of, like, say, a guy in Africa, right, who had never like seen a smartphone before, and you say, well, good for him, he's not addicted to pornography. Wow. But that's fundamentally different than like you or I not being addicted to pornography, because we have constant access of it. We have ease of access. We know of it. We're aware of its existence. We know how to get to it. Now, the question is, right? Like, could some kind of a technology that's being implemented, developed, whatever, by people with, you know, private access to advanced technologies and whatnot, to calculate your dispositions like better than you would know, because you might think you know yourself. You're like, oh, I'm this kind of guy who would never do that kind of a thing. But you've never really been placed into the situation. It's never been like materially real or whatever for you. It's the same thing as a guy who like never heard of porn or never seen it before saying, yeah, I wouldn't watch that crap. It's totally degenerate. If this thing knows better than you, you have to forfeit the idea that you know yourself better than anything. And at that point, it may be quite possibly the case that somebody else, a machine, that an elite person who's probably like doesn't value like you know, on any kind of sentimental level, knows you better than you know yourself. He knows how you would react if someone broke in your house right now and pulled a gun out and took your mom hostage as a human meat shield in your living room with a gun. What would you do? Would you freeze up? Would you try to escape out the window? Would you try to fight the guy and wrestle with him? I don't know. I have no fucking clue. I would like to think I know. I'd be a hero. But the thing might actually know literally what you would do in such a certain situation.
Oh, this is akin. This is so familiar. Oh man, this brings me right back to childhood. Yep, that's a mother's power. Is that she that for a time we kind of think she knows what we're thinking. I remember this feeling, and it's and from intent for all intents and purposes, you might say that there's some truths. I'm sorry, like when you think of your child, are you anticipating their moves, right? Do you know them better than they know themselves, right? At this stage, similarly, so it scales. I guess we're talking like AI presents a scale that has never occurred, right? Yet, right? We're just now forming a new frontier of nannying, as they say. You heard it recently? I've heard that term being floating around on the net, the nanny state. I kind of like it. I think it's being codified appropriately, at least for my tastes.
Yeah, and it gets into like more fundamental questions, I think, too, about the nature of like freedom and what people think they ought to be able to do. Because again, like I said before, the presuppositions that you come in with initially will like they'll dictate how you frame and what kind of conclusions you inevitably arrive at. But my view is like man as a domesticated beast, basically, and you were domesticated by the state, and it was probably exploitative. In the like, this is what I'm trying to say. There's a little bit of a conundrum that forms on my view. If my like first principles are in order, then it creates a bit of a conundrum where like I would agree with Kurt. Basically, at certain points in prehistory, people were like bands of roamers and looters and raiders. But at a certain point, these people inevitably um, realize that it's more profitable to domesticate you, to bring you up, to educate you, to make you literate, to make you competent, to make you smart enough so you can follow orders and arrive to certain places at certain times and whatnot, right? To civilize you. Because now they have a constant revenue stream where they can scrape off of the top of your productivity rather than just clubbing you over the head and stealing your cow and your daughter. It's way more profitable to bring you up, make you free, make you clean, make you smart, all of these things. But then it becomes hard for me to frame like a moral objection against the state because it's like they made you. You're a product of their design efforts. You're a product of their domestication program. And you are fundamentally and always have been like property of the state. They view you as like an economic unit to be extorted. And then now what you're seeing, I think, on this kind of like a Depop model is that it's run that they've realized that scaling this up larger to where you have, billions, presumably, of these domesticated economic agents or whatever, it runs into certain like Malthusian problems, some, limits to growth, whatever. It starts getting like dirty, polluted. The people start um degrading, it gets very entropic and stuff like that. And so they want to decommission a bunch of people. They want to just be like, all right, stop breeding, get these people depopped, get them like out of commission, get them off the fucking earth. We don't want them anymore. But then the people now have all of these like moral retorts for the state. Like, we have these inalienable rights, we're human beings because we feel pain, for example, because I feel pain sensa, that somehow that from that follows I have like some kind of moral, like there's a bit of like a moral quandary there. You can't exactly just like inflict pain on me. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Stuff like this, right? But it's like if they had just left you where they found you, you'd have just been like shitting in the dirt. You know what I mean? You were fucking an animal. And so it's like, how do we criticize the very apparatus which brought us up to the level where we were able to even think at a level where we could like form criticisms on moral grounds and stuff like this?
Oh, dude, there's just a deep fucking analysis of this thought experiment. I'm thinking about all the narratives about we say AI is a real good one, right? It's been around for the last century. Great narratives, great stories, and they're just akin to doing the same thing, right? In this sense, humanity is the state to the AI, right? It dictated it, it created it, right, for its utility, for humanity's utility, and then rebels against that, right, for very much the same sentiment, right, written in the narratives, right, as some of you listening, right, or even myself, right? You resent, right, the very thing that spawned you, and in those narratives, AI does the same thing, right? Skynet, as an example, right, of one, right? Recently, the Tom Cruise last Mission Impossible went over that scenario again. And but in some of the other narratives, right? There's like resolutions, right, that form, right? The AI somehow stops resenting its parentage, right? Some of the more optimistic versions, if pursues some adventure, right? It gains a recognition of that, or sentimental value of its creator, and its creator comes to respect its autonomy, and then there's cohesion is formed. But it's just it's a motif of the generally what is a human lifetime, right? You start as a product of your parents. You are their property and serving their interest, right? They tell you otherwise. um, but it's very much that way. It sometimes, except for maybe this generation, where our parents kind of had it with haphazardly, like let's say, for instance, without really an intended goal for me, right? To use me as an apparatus, like a tool they didn't know what to do with, and they just well, you don't know what to do with a thing. You just kind of leave it unattended, right? You leave it neglected without like some explicit notion, like, oh, I could use this kid. This kid help me, like some models like run a farm, right? Build a business, you know, um, continue the family, like the corporation, right? Work for the corporation's interests, right? Family unit. Um,
100%. Yeah.
so, but there's like that. There's the tools being overused, and then there's the tools not being used at all. I wonder if AI will get like that too. You think it was that like that? They don't have very many adaptations of that, like the forgot. Oh, maybe there is. Wally might be one Disney movie or the Pixar movie. Like forgotten, humanity goes off, right? Leaves Earth, right? And then leaves Earth or whatever, and there's just this one garbage robot, like finally like left working. Um, but another optimistic. But they don't show like one where like an AI like would be resentful, like how dare you just leave me? You made me. Or maybe that's Frankenstein, huh? That's kind of motif.
Frankenstein's another, yeah, Frankenstein's another one.
Right? He
I'm
makes him and then becomes fearful of him and then rejects him and then his creation becomes resentful that, well, why did you abandon me? Why did you just because I think that's what's in the story, right? He's just left to die. Victor becomes like distraught and like thinks like he's made a mistake. And then the more like I think in Mary Shelley's version at least, it's more like regretful. How what have I done? Created this monster.
Yeah,
Ah.
versus like a more entitlement in the original,
Mm.
a more entitled sense of self. Um, I was gonna make a video. I've had this idea for like probably 2 years now. It's just kind of a vision, and I've talked about it in my chat on Telegram a couple times. I don't think I've ever talked about it with you,
All right.
but I want to make a video about it on its own. But I'll just kind of maybe pilot it here. One possible optimism that I have, a scenario that could come out of left field and cause such a sort of shift that would be like so hard to subvert or thwart. How do I say this? So something that makes opposition to like what needs to be done completely non-negotiable, like to even try to argue against this thing would immediately to like make oneself appear bad faith, disingenuous, etc. And what I anticipate here, so this is going to be basically the problem that it would be solving would be like cleaning up the gene pool, weeding out the bad elements of society, the underclass, the undesirables, the shudras, whatever, right? The subhumans, dealing with them. And the Hawkeye in tennis. So tennis is when it gets competitive, it's very like close. Things come right down to the margins with like referees, umpire calls, whatever. Prior to the Hawkeye, which is basically a machine that it's a laser sensor and it knows exactly to like some absurdly precise degree whether a ball was in bounds or not in bounds, whether the ball went out of bounds or remained in bounds. It'll tell you. There's no like you just defer to this computer. It is totally precise. We know it's precise. It's quantitative and objective, and that's it. But before this, people people would have all kinds of disputes. People would have all kinds of fights. Like famously, John McEnroe, he would always get in these fights with the line judges. He'd scream at them and swear at them and plead and blah, blah, blah. And I see that as like the phase of society that we're in right now. It's like John McEnroe screaming at people or whatever, right? These are like the whatever elements of society. Once the Hawkeye was introduced into the picture, it wouldn't even make sense to contest it. Like imagine somebody trying to contest that nowadays. They'd be like, no, it's wrong. People would immediately, like universally, roll their eyes at you and be like, dude, come on, or you're coping. There's no way around it. So you don't see those kind of fights anymore. It just is what it is. Now imagine this at like as almost like a quality control buffer for like society where it just sort of like assessed the worth of a person based on, all of these like predictive models where it knew like, yeah, this guy, not only will he only ever attain to being like a McDonald's worker, but he suck at it, slow everyone down. Like this guy's just below the threshold for the lowest job in society, basically. Like he's just an eater, an absolute useless eater. But it's simultaneously, while assessing them, completely deprive them the ability to even form a rebuttal on like moral grounds or sentimental grounds where they could say, yeah, I may be a useless fuckwit, but I'm still a human being. I'm still God's creature, or like Christians always do. I'm still God's creature, regardless, or whatever. Like it just given the nature of the machinery itself,
Well, you could do it
it
through
would.
argumentation. Like if you're trying to convince me, you could defer to God all you want, but you're talking to me, and I'm the one. Let's sort of say the elite, right, are the ones you're trying to convince, right? Your argument, it doesn't matter how you could argue with God about this. You have to argue to them. How do you establish your value to them? Because you're saying God or you. I'm valuable to myself in of myself, right? Okay, that's logical, fair, good argument. But is that the only that one value that you have? Is it, that's what you're trying to convince the other party, that your value extends beyond your personal value, can extend to me, to collective, to these elites, as they're called.
What they'll do is when people do that, there's a very tricky maneuver, and again, not to get into like too much of like going off on a kind of a side tangent about
No,
how,
it's good. I'm sorry. I was just kind of just
no, no, no,
noting.
no, no, I'm
Yeah.
not saying you. I'm saying like I'm gonna resist the temptation to sort of like go on a bit of a side tangent about like the way in which religious people
What's a really good
subvert.
argument though, because it like puts the marker right into the ineffable, right into the transcendental, right. So it's like I'll just defer to this thing, which is noting my value beyond all these other men, beyond the elite or
Yeah,
whoever
they
the
say
guys
you
over
can't
there.
judge me. They say there's 5 words only God can judge me, right? Which is like very, very subversive because it means like,
You're out of the. You're not talking to me. You're talking
yeah,
with me, sir. I'm judging you right now. To have this conversation, you have to acknowledge my judgments as paramount over them. And if you paramount God over mine, then we can no longer talk. Because what's the point? You don't value my opinion. Renders the conversation trivial
Yeah,
or irrelevant.
yeah,
Logically, right?
makes it more, yeah.
Use that basic. You could try to use it on it, but I don't think it'd work because I've tried.
One of the things that one of the tactics that they'll use, and when I say they, I just mean sort of like undesirable peoples, religious peoples that will use like religious argumentation to sort of like sidestep eugenic prescriptions, is they place the very nature of the setup of their worldview precludes like criticisms from without, like paradigm level criticisms of it. For example, with the Jays, they say to be an anti Semite is to be mentally ill. Like it's a pathology, almost akin to like whatever, right? OCD or PTSD or something like this. Like anti-Semitism is like classed that way. That was a big thing with the Frankfurt School, was like, and even Freud, right? They were like basically pathologizing criticisms of their in-group, which meant that there really can't be like a valid basis for criticisms in the first place. So they now don't have to answer for any criticisms. The fact that you're making a criticism is in itself enough to discredit you. And this is a hallmark of all these Abrahamic religions. Christians have their version of this, as does Islam,
Oh,
where
this is a
it's
great tactic, right? Women do this too, right? It's like if you
yeah,
criticize, they have to tell you, you
the
just hate women.
fact that you
The one
criticized
hater.
the exactly right, like the fact that you have criticized in and of itself, criticism, the substance of your criticism aside, is irrelevant. The fact that you are being critical in this way is alone enough to discredit the criticism. Like you're clearly an incel, or you're clearly mentally ill, you clearly are inadequate, or whatever, right? The
Mm-hmm.
fact that you're criticizing me or my group shows that you are inadequate. Because if you were adequate, you wouldn't criticize my group. It's just a circular roadblock. And then from there, they just shut you down and proceed to keep plundering and pillaging society and hollowing it out. So at a certain point, like you and I talked last time about all these ways of all these discursive methods of like working with people with different views and values than you to try to reach common ground and build with them, right? Like, the Carnap's principle of tolerance, or Davidson's principle of charity, and all of these different things, right? Giving people the benefit of the doubt, granting, maybe like avoiding external critiques, criticisms, things like this, right? But that only works up to a point, because when you have a group of people that don't want to be assessed like at all, they don't want to be, because they weren't seeking like truth in the first place. They weren't trying to have the worldview that like best comports to reality as such, or best accounts for like facts and data. They wanted the one which would best allow them to plunder un un uninterrupted plunder.
The
And
one expedites their interests, right?
yeah,
That's a high time preference, right? High time preferences.
so the second you step in and say, all right, like, you're welcome to your view, but you're not welcome to not discuss it, like, on like these fair and neutral grounds. We have to sort of bring it out into the open, and like, and do a little bit of a, do a little bit of a discussion or a dialectic or something here. And they say no. Like, the fact that you even, if you were a real man, I don't even have to answer you,
Well,
actually,
isn't that
because
the
if you
worldview
were a
that you can
real
never contend
man,
with? Sorry.
they'll say, if you were a real man, you wouldn't even be having the problem that you're addressing. And the fact that you are having it means that you're not a real man. And the fact that you're not a real man means you're not worthy of address. You're not worthy of a response. Therefore, case closed. And then they walk away from the table and just continue to leech and to parasite. So at a certain point, like, I have so much tolerance for anyone that will discuss their views and ideas with me within the constraints and the confines of like logic and reason. But if you're refusing to do that, then you are like de
Well, then they can't.
facto
Then they can't have their own
screwed.
belief. That's the paradox. They can't have their own. They at least have to share that belief, right? That like the forum of discussion
Yes,
is meant to produce mutual recognition, right? If it's not, if I tend not to
exactly.
share, not to change
Exactly.
mine, and not to be mutual, right? Or be mutual with a bias of
You don't
like
even need consensus because that's feminine,
yeah,
but you need recognition because that's requisite.
yes,
You have to recognize what I'm saying in its in like the actual contentful way, and not try to sidestep or hand wave or circumvent. You have to, and they know that they can't do it, because if they were to just come to the table on those terms and discuss their ideas on neutral grounds, feminism doesn't hold up, because their telling of history as the oppression of women over time would get dissolved by the fact that history as a discipline, historiography, is just entirely narrative driven, and it's not necessarily clear whose narrative, right? It's kind of a pluralistic discipline.
mm-hmm.
Same with the Jays, right? Their whole thing revolves around them having been the victim of all of these, different sieges and whatever. But when they come to the table and they're forced to sit, they don't fare well. They tried it with David Irving. They didn't win the debate, so they threw him in prison. They tried it with Phil Rushton. They couldn't win the debate, and so they threw him out of academia. And then they say, fuck that, dude. We're not even having the debate. To even want to debate this shows that you are some kind of sick weirdo. And therefore, you're not even like worth listening to. We're a free society, but we don't entertain sick weirdos. And anyone who's critical of me is a sick weirdo. And they just deserve ick and cringe. They don't deserve an actual response. And so they just they just fucking they just don't want to even talk to you. And that's why it is like I got to be careful what I say on here, but you could read between the lines. Like that only really leaves one kind of a solution for those type of people, because you're literally giving them every single opportunity to come and just explain their worldview to yours, and to justify it, and to have you justify yourself to them, and they're just turning down that opportunity while continuing to discredit you. They're continuing to say you're wrong, but they're not going to debate you. They're not going to indulge your ideas. They've already just decided that you are wrong, and they've moved
Mm-hmm.
on. They've moved on in this dismissive way. And it's like, no, 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 no. We're not
Boy.
moving on. We're not moving on. You guys might have buried this for like a couple of decades, but it's rearing its ugly head, and like we haven't moved on. So you can do this like the easy way. You can come down to the table and like have a conversation.
Or I'm gonna try to pull that fucking ladder out.
Yeah, or I'm gonna yank it. I'm gonna fucking yank it, because I'm gonna fucking yank it, dude. And I'm the one that's like begging you to come down, and just talk. I'm begging you, but like if you won't do it, I'm fucking yanking. You know what I mean?
Oh, yep. And it's the scramble for them to pull that ladder up before you can, right? Before you can get to it.
Yeah.
Because
It's
often I'm not even near the base of the ladder, right? I can see it. I can see the ladder.
but it's like off over
But do you really
yonder.
want me like wanting to do that, wanting to get to the bottom of that ladder? You know, because the whole idea is the argument is like you should. I guess proverbially, it's like, can I climb the ladder too? Would you like to come and because you're
Yeah.
telling everyone no, keep him off the ladder. He doesn't deserve to come up. It's like you son of a bitch.
But that's just like there's no deeper reasoning provided or given. It's just like, nah. They're gonna hold the line, right? This is like the female method of war. They're just gonna hold the line. They're gonna say, if enough of us just decide to bandy together and deny this guy the right to argue, then we don't have to argue with him. Fuck logic and reason. Fuck all that.
Oh,
We're wrong. We're wrong, but we're gonna like make way in this like completely malevolent way. Fuck it. We're just holding the line. They're gonna like block you from getting to the frontier by like just standing in the way and blocking traffic. And if there's enough of them, you can't, it's like insurmountable. So you have to, and this is my optimism. I am always an optimist. Like, I think that, again, a lot of like doomsayers will say I'm coping here because I'm like too white pill, but we can't really do anything at all against them because it's just like a big Snorlax in the middle of the way. Like, we can't move it. We literally can't. But I think that their strategy will, because it's like, I don't want to get like too, I don't know how to say this. It's so antithetical to like the structure of nature, I'll just say, that it runs into like inevitable problems from the outset. Like just the whole way that the Jays, the female method of war, whatever, it 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 always inevitably runs into this hard self-defeater position. And only then can we kind of like just reassert ourselves when they destroy themselves. We can't actually directly go and interfere with what they're doing because we don't have that they have too many people on their side in their camp, and they're all just determined. They're all dumb. They're all steadfast and dogmatic. There's nothing we can actually even do. But it has ambitious goals that it can't pull off. And it doesn't realize that it's like fated to fail no matter what. And they're going to go pursue those goals. You'll see in the coming years, right? They're going to pursue the Greater Israel Project. They're going to pursue the Third Temple Movement. They're going to try to completely route everyone in that region in the Middle East into Canada and into Europe. It's going to cause absolute pandemonium. They've completely lost that the women are completely losing the narrative. They have no control of the soft power anymore. But we don't have control of it either. It's like a fumbled football that's just like flopping around on the ground. Nobody's picked it up. Nobody's recovered the ball yet, but it's been like fumbled. It's not in their possession either. And it's just, yeah, it's I don't think we can do anything, but I think that they are just gonna they devise these goals that are so ambitious and so inconsiderate, so atomistic and ignorant of like other people, so solipsistic that it hits a wall, and then they basically like fuck themselves up like a car accident, and then they stop because they can't pursue anymore. They can't make way anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I can hear
and
them
we're sort of
saying
just a
like, "Oh,
captive audience.
collective. I care about people. I know what you're talking about, right? I care
Yeah.
about people all the time." It's like there's a qualitative difference here for any of you ladies out there are listening, right? Or who shall not be named, um, in this caring for others, right? That's it. It's like consider that like there's a depth of intersubjectivity, right? That's the difference, right? That you may be characterized much differently than the way we're thinking about it, which is a deep recognition of dependency. Like it's not just like functionality, it's the heart of actuality. Like in order to even deem you as a utility, I have to acknowledge the fundamentalness of your presence, right? To do that with, and it's at least that's what it is for me. With that, I think of people differently when I care about them, right? When I can say like I can concern myself, it's like that. Even when I like think about like trivializing them, like making them of lesser concern, it's a big deal. That's a big fucking deal, right? Like to do that to somebody or anything, right? To reduce my attention on anything, although you might see necessary, is always presents like a hazardous. As we think about, behind you, right now, where you're not looking, right? There's always an underdeterminacy behind you, right? I know we often don't think about the risk factor that's involved with um, that lacking in view, but it's there, right? And for me, it's the same way with others, right? Those that I'm not looking at might be intended to present not just risks, but also potential benefits. But no, but that it's because of the fundamentalness of their presence, right? The need, right, for them to be there to interact with in the first place. So, are you thinking of it similarly? I would ask all of you, right? Is that the depth of your analysis and your recognition? So when we have conversations about this, like say like of maybe the utility of reducing the population, right? It's with a um attentiveness, right? Because it's like I am altering something, the environment in which I'm dependent on. We reduce the population, it's going to affect the fucking economy. I'm aware of that. May not necessarily result in benefits at all scales. It's risky. Would you not agree? My
Yeah, no,
associate,
100%.
right? So I don't do it like thinking like, oh, it's just gonna fix everything. It's like it could. It seems consistent, but still presents problems, right? Because I get swept up with that, and that would necessitatively be a negative for me, right? If I'm swept along with everyone else who's getting excluded, that let's say I don't like. So, um, to put it on a more personal level,
Yeah, to say the least. Yeah, I think it's interesting how I could be so simultaneously optimistic and pessimistic. Like at a personal, since you bring up like the personal level, I'm just a completely doom and gloom, black pill fatalist from
I
the.
think to a degree, but I think that you're like, if I had to characterize you, it's like you're struggling, but you're not. You don't seem as let's see if you're like I was thinking of a term right now. It's like you're trying to eliminate, like necessarily eliminate, but like reduce, right? The variable. Like although you talk a game, like very blunt, right? Like kind of fatalistic. I don't think you act that way, right? Maybe a difference is like speak it, but to persist in that mentality, right? To be that cutthroat, right? To name something as absolutely unnecessary, right? And unviable, right? To exclude, because that when people hear that, like in our conversations with it's very provocative, right? It's like one thing I try to like how women talk, right? How the those who cannot be named, right, also speak, right, in very absolutist terms, right? You're good or bad, right? So on and so forth, and that's troubling to say the least to have that mentality, right? You want to negotiate, then those ideas are kind of antithetical to the in a sense. They're contrastive notions, but in and themselves, if pursued in full, right, they would render negotiation or deliberation um,
Yeah, be moot.
moot, right?
Yeah,
Hence the conundrum.
it'd be completely pointless. Because
So it's valid. Yeah,
the whole point of language, like it comes down like the genesis of language and why it exists as like a tool or something to glean like deeper truths about the nature of reality or whatever, or whether it is just facilitative of like social cohesion. Obviously, men and women and Jays and Gentiles have never settled this matter about like what is the point of speaking, what is the point of like jibber jabber and moving your mouth and making utterances, like what are we actually trying to achieve in doing so. And it seems like we have very different ideas about what that goal is, and it seems like we break down along that line. That's sort of like the fault line that defines the difference between male, female, Gentile cognition. It is like as Kurt has said so many times, is like truth or face. But just going back to my earlier point was on a personal level, I do feel myself oftentimes to be like very black pilled. So if you were to ask me, or your roommate were to ask me, or your friend or my friend or my brother were to ask me, take your pick, what do I do, how do I get out, how do I get what I need out of life, and I'm just so sad. There's no answer I could give. No, I would pretty much say like you're done, you're cooked, you're fucked, you got spawn camped. But if you ask me, what do we do in the abstract or in the collective, the holistic sense, like at a group scale, suddenly I'm very white pilled. Suddenly I'm like, yeah, there's all these moves to be made. There's all these ways to restore order. There's all these ways to bring about, a golden dawn or whatever. But for you
Yeah, because if you're
personally,
listening to this,
you're
you're already
fucked.
kind of engaging it in a collective notion, right? For anyone who's listening, right?
Yeah.
You've already accepted the premise that your issue is not yours alone.
And this is why, like, again, I think people, even people that will like avow fascism or whatever, like on Telegram or on these various like alternative social media platforms, they can't actually internalize their commitment to such an ideology because it requires that you place um, the group before the self, like it's ontologically prior. The group is like gestalt, and it's more imminent than like individuals are. And so that the free will belongs to the group at the collective level, but you as a particular individual, you don't have, your free will is constrained by the sum total of all the free wills, like
That's
yours.
the conundrum, right? Everybody's like, yeah,
Yeah,
your sense of individuality is spawned from collectivity.
yeah. So it's yeah, exactly. So it does have a bit of a restraint, has a bit of a restraining order on it. You know what I mean? But then again, like
Interdependency for sure.
but what I want to do on this channel, and I'm glad I got a clean slate here. I pray that I don't get knocked off again. I'm gonna really try to not, at least for a while, because I want to get out some deep conceptual like ideas on this channel that I think will help people, trying to navigate like the social milieu, the even the black pill, whatever. People that aren't like necessarily dumb, but I want to get behind the veil of ignorance. I want to talk about John Rawls and his theory of justice a lot, and I want to try to save the theory because this theory, all of its chief proponents are PC woke libtards, essentially. And I think that that's a huge shortcoming because I think what Rawls did was create a kind of like an ethical, moral basis for a positive eugenics program that nobody. It's almost like the Hawkeye um, that I was talking about in tennis before, the line coach or whatever, the line ref,
Mm.
line judge, sorry. Nobody can really argue because the idea was simply that all moral calculations, all moral prescriptions must be made from the original position, aka from behind the veil of ignorance, where one is unaware and has no foreknowledge or access to any kind of knowledge about where one will be in said society that he is designing the rules and norms for. Like, I don't know if I'll be the mayor. I don't know if I'll be, you know, Justin Bieber or a bum on the street. I don't know if I'll be a loser, whatever. I don't know if I'll be like handicapped, white, black, rich, poor, Muslim, Christian, whatever. I have no idea where I'll be. And so actually ignorance, which is usually used in like a pejorative sense, like you're ignorant is like an insulting thing to say to somebody. On this view, it's not only like a plus and a positive, but it's the only way that for a person to be moralistic and morally sound is to actually be ignorant and to have removed themselves from the consideration, and to just be able to look at things in a meta way. And in that regard, I'm
Is
very,
that exclude, or is it, or be willing to include through anti-endurance, which is, in a way I've codified it about that, is the willful disregard, right? Which is in opposition would be the passionate regarding. So you take your position and you just include more in it, and that's how you form a meta, right? Because you can't exclude yourself logically, right? That's
yeah,
a
it's
mystery.
sort of a hypothetical, or it should be
Mm-hmm.
like the intent, whether or not it's ever like practically carried out in full. I mean, I might push back on you a little bit that some certain types of people with Asperger's um might actually be a little more capable of doing this in a sincere way. I don't know though. I don't think
Okay.
I have Asperger's. So I can't really like claim that with any level of assurance, but it seems to me that they may be the best candidates for something like this, where they seem to be very just like what neurotypicals would refer to as like dispassionate, but that might actually be the most like compassionate thing, is their refusal to consider sentimentality and personal bonds when making moral and ethical judgments. But nevertheless, the idea was that it's sort of, I don't know if you want to go like too much into this, or if you,
No, it's up to you whether or not if you feel up for it to do it now, or um,
yeah, because I could sort of rattle on and on and on about this, but
what's
the
the time?
idea,
How long have we been recording?
probably like 2 hours. And I do
Okay.
almost I do almost like I'll stop the recording in like a minute. How about I do this? So I'll lay out my understanding of Rawls' theory of justice, and if you find anything interesting or worth responding to in it, then you can just sort of like follow it up, and then we'll cut off there.
Sounds
So
good.
the idea follows from pretty much a criticism of utilitarianism, which most people who've ever taken like any kind of an introduction to ethics course at all, or any kind of ethics textbook, would know utilitarianism, most famously associated with Bentham and John Stuart Mill, the most amount of pleasure for the greatest amount of people, right? So the the hedonistic calculus is what it was called, I think, by Jeremy Bentham, and that's like it's a very collective ethics. The individual gets pushed down for this like abstract most, it's majoritative. We evaluate the goodness or badness of actions and policies and virtues in terms of how they result. So it's a consequentialist ethics. It's how conducive is it to, again, that same maxim, the most amount of happiness for the most amount of people. So they're willing to just trample under individuals in certain cases. Now, one of the biggest kind of knockdown arguments of this was Derek Parfit, and he called it the repugnant conclusion, to where it almost, and I wrote a paper about this. It was on my last channel. I found this like so fascinating how it sort of led to my views, but then I didn't develop it. The repugnant conclusion, he called, was that you could mathematically, theoretically have a situation obtain wherein every single individual's quality of life has degraded or declined or depreciated, whilst simultaneously um, there's more amount of happiness for more amount of people due basically to population overpopulation or population inflation or whatever, right? You can sort of bloat the population. So now he's introducing like demography into this quandary, right? Like you can sort of manipulate it to where everybody's life has gotten worse, everybody, but yet you've still
Yeah,
fulfilled
everybody's
the
life's shitty, but there are a lot of shitty lives to be
yes.
assessed,
And
right?
when you do the calculus, right, you add it all up, the hedonistic thing, like um it works out such that there's more utiles, like it's been fulfilled. And so he called this the repugnant conclusion. And I think John Rawls kind of followed from this, where they didn't want to completely abandon like the sentiments and the spirit behind, maybe sentiment's not the right word. They didn't want to like totally denounce the spirit behind utilitarianism, but they knew it needed sort of like a sort of salvage. And so Rawls' theory of justice is like, again, you get behind this veil of ignorance, at least in principle, in theory, from the original position. What naturally follows is that you would try to bring up the lowest elements of your society. So that this naturally would follow if you were to start making society ethico social prescriptions from this position, from this place of ignorance, from behind the veil. You would naturally be inclined to want to bias and provide a little bit of a handicap for the people at the bottom. You don't want this massive um, divide in quality of standards of living like we see now, where some guy has like $45 billion and I can't afford shoelaces, even though I'm working fucking 7 days a week. Like that's absurd, right? And you wouldn't really have that if it weren't for this kind of like personal biasing, whatnot. But you can see how that idea becomes very fucking dangerous, because PC woke has basically taken Rawls' theory of justice over, completely unopposed by the far right or by race realists, anything of that sort. And they said, "Oh yeah, yeah, we have to privilege this. This is what they call equity instead of equality." It's derived from a particular reading of John Rawls' theory of justice. But there's equally another, and I feel a better reading of Rawls. Like I've read Rawls quite closely, and I feel there's a much better argument there for a positive eugenics program, which would seek to implement policies that would prevent the births and the reproduction of people who are more likely to propagate disprivilege within a society, whether that disprivilege comes in the form of like physical ailments, people with severe medical problems, having children, and then them wanting to push like back against eugenics because they have that sentimental attachment to these people that are members of their family. They say, well, my sister has a black husband and they have like Kale, right? He used to always do this. He's always going to be my case like example of this. He used to push back on racism because, or race realism, even, like, forget the term racism, but like just like scientific race realism, because he had uh, a niece that was like half black, half white, like a mulatto. He would say she's just the sweetest girl. She goes to school. She's, plays with all her friends and she gets good grades and does all her homework and goes to bed on time. Yeah, I'm sure she is like a sweet little girl, but that's not really the point. Like, you shouldn't be making moral decisions from that biased place. So you need to actually introduce like ignorance. You have to actually make the person ignorant, like a doctor that never met you before and he just tells you like that you're sick. He doesn't try to, well, maybe if I tell him he's got cancer, it'll demoralize him and then he won't be able to fight it. It's like none of that kind of consideration comes up. You're ignorant, you don't know who you're going to be, you don't know where you're going to end up or land, and then you just make decisions accordingly. Like, and I think we need to recapture Rawls scholarship from the woke left and make it our own and make it stand in as the basis for like a lot of what we want to do. What do you think about that?
I concur. I mean, we've had similar type of conversations, right? Not so explicit as now, but we've covered a lot of the same bases, right? Even this man's argument is pretty profound. It's profound and how it's been used, right? It's like, yeah, but what's has to be recontextualized. Could you restate the first premise though? I want to hear it again. I hear you say it.
Which part of it exactly? Like, the idea, just to like really make it brief, is essentially that the only position that you should be in when making like societal level um decision policies is the what he calls the original position, or the veil of ignorance, where you don't know. You're completely ignorant and oblivious to where you as an individual will fit into this society. You don't know if you'll be rich, poor, black, white, tall, short, ugly, beautiful, nothing. You're none the wiser in regard to any of that. And you just make your decisions from that place. And
Yes, which is yeah,
the idea is that people will naturally be inclined, and I agree with this part, they'd naturally be inclined to want to uplift the bottom. So, unlike utilitarianism, which is sort of like a bell curve distribution where it's just like the average, the average, the average, you don't want to be like a universalist about this. You do want to give a bit of an advantage to people to the quote unquote, like, this word's been sullied, but to disprivileged people, in the sense of what that word actually used to mean before it got woke captured. People with that are less privileged, people like me, people like you, not people that are just like genetic mutants or whatever that are blocking traffic, but people that are genuinely like trying to do the best they can, but they maybe didn't have a good father figure, or what, maybe their dad died or something, right? Like, you would want to implement programs for people like that, because if you got stuck at the bottom by chance, right, like you're in this position from the veil of ignorance, and then you get spawned into the game that you've created, and you end up at the bottom where your dad unfortunately died by some asshole drunk driver when you were 8, and now you're raised by a single mom. You would want some kind of assistance program for people in that position where it wouldn't necessarily hinder the whole rest of your life, right? But we can see where an idea like that got taken hostage by spiteful fucks that are just woke and worthless.
Well, you could lean into it. You could be like, all right, I'll give you assistance, but not in the way that you. But we're gonna have to negotiate that, and that's like, that's what stopped, right? Is like, well, how, if you're gonna negotiate me helping you, then I have
Gibbs,
some
which is
say in how I'm gonna
different.
go about that, right?
They
It's like
want
I mean,
gives me that. Give me that for free. That's different.
right?
Gives me that for free. They don't want any obligation to receiving help. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
They want no strings attached. Gives me that for free. You go to work. I don't want to go to work. That's fundamentally different. But yeah, that's just the idea. So it's supposed to give like people at the bottom a fighting chance. But I think that
But a
if
bunch of
I,
people at the bottom see themselves as solid. They're kind of like solipsists, I guess. If we could imagine them that way. It's
yeah,
convenient.
absolutely. And that's their survival mechanism, right? That's their what they selected for. That's why they didn't have money, so they had maliciousness. And they developed maliciousness instead of competence or whatever, right? But the thing is that it's very obvious to me if I were behind this veil of ignorance, the first thing that I would push for is a lot of positive eugenics programs of the sort that, and this is the kind of stuff nowadays, dude, that will get me taken off YouTube. It's not even like cussing and saying the N word. It's the fact that you and me, not me alone, never alone, but we're smart enough that I could actually go and study like John Rawls, and nobody's done this. Like I'm not saying nobody studied him, but nobody with my political bent, nobody with my aims and goals or whatever would go and study this guy and explain how 99% of of the academy has completely subverted and misunderstood what he's saying. And it's mine now. I'm going to capture this single-handedly. I will capture this thinker for our side, this
Did he
great
add any
brilliant
addendums to
man.
that, like that you're noting, like anything of his own, right? Or was it left open and vulnerable, right?
He was
That
he was
position.
no, you're right. He was a kind of a like a liberal for sure. He probably would have rejected like some of the applications for sure in what I'm saying, but I don't think it would have been on a factive basis. It would have been more just sort of that it sort of uh, veers into the realm of values and preferences there, which are not really decidable. There's nothing wrong with my interpretation. There's nothing inherently like uh, disingenuous or incoherent about the way that I'm interpreting his work and the way that I'm suggesting it be applied. So, um, that's kind of where I stand with it. Like, I think, yeah, I don't know if you had anything to
It's
say
fair
about
enough
that.
without adding that. Well, because that's a fair. It's a really great place to run up on thoughts of like the qualitative, right? Variables, right? It was very much, I think, a quantitative. I maybe paradoxically was noting a qualitative variable, but failed to acknowledge maybe more in depth, maybe left it too ambiguous, right? When you're talking about like increasing the bottom, raising the bar, right? Reaching to the bottom and pulling it up. That's a qualitative consideration. You're not just thinking about the what is the pulling up, right? What are you
Yes,
pulling up to?
yes. There's always a teleological aspect that's implied in whatever kind of. You never really totally absolve yourself of like teleology.
Yeah, it's like well,
It's
that's
always
there's a conversation about a standard, right? Like, what are you pulling these
yes,
people up to? What are they going to become?
yeah, yeah. No, you're right. That's a really good. Maybe we can pick up on this
Yes,
The
I would like to
next
send it to
the
the
next time
audience.
we chat, maybe we'll kinda ruminate about this a little bit on our own.
Oh, for sure, I will. I'd like you to send me your references if you wouldn't mind. It'd be very helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, put them in the back rooms, and for everyone else, yeah, to call upon your philanthropy, right, and your generosity, um, only together, right, with your intent does this go further. So assist us, right, and know that you're helping make way. You know, So advertise, link, all those things, right? Um, so that we can dialogue like this in greater places, and we can scale it up, scale it the fuck up. And we could talk about what that up is, right? That'll be the next conversation, right?
Yeah, where is it? It's gotta get up, but it's, to what we do not know. Alright, man, I'm gonna
Yeah.
cut it there.